Hello everyone, this is movie 2 of What If Naruto Becomes a God, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Forest of Death. Naruto and his team were rushing in the Forest of Death. They had been running for hours, with a 15-minute break every 3 hours for Sakura, and yet they hadn't found any team. Not even Naruto's sensory skills, which could go for over 100 meters, found any chakra signal, and he used it every 100 meters. Naruto was getting agitated. He knew the chances of finding an Earth scroll on the first day weren't many, but he expected to come across at least one of the many teams in the forest. But he had no luck so far. He looked to the sky, seeing the sun quickly going down. "We will now search for a good spot to camp," he told them, getting nods. After a few minutes, they stumbled on a rocky part of the forest. Naruto looked around, then with an earth jutsu, made a small cave-like opening. They sat down, as he lit up fire and heated the rations. They ate in silence, until Sakura spoke. Naruto. He looked at her. "How bad was your life in Konoha?" she said, causing both Naruto and Sasuke to stop, with the latter looking at the former. With a sigh, he placed his food down. "I guess I should start from the beginning. We're teammates, it's only fair," he said. They nodded, looking intently as he took out a kunai and rotated from its ring. "Well, after I was born and my parents abandoned me, due to certain circumstances regarding me, the village hated me. Even as a boy, I had as many assassination attempts as a cage of a medium-power village. I was put into many orphanages, but they all kicked me out after a while. From the age of 4 to 6, I stayed in an apartment paid by the Hokage. During that time, I had to learn to live on my own. I learned to cook, to wash, to repair, anything to take care of the house. It was difficult, of course, the stores always kicked me out, so I had to scavenge in order to survive. At that time, every once in a while I would get another attempt, or get beaten by drunken villagers. However, my apartment one day was lit on fire, with me in it. I jumped off, only to fall into an alley, where a mob waited. It was the first bad beating I experienced, with broken bones and cuts, among other things. This continued for a year, until one fateful night," he said, shaking his head and biting his lips, not wanting to remember. By that point Sakura had tears in her eyes, while Sasuke had a large frown and looked at him sadly. "Once I became 8, I went to the Hokage and took part in a special department of workers. I learned to fight there. After that, once I became 12, I was given my inheritance." He finished. Sakura was sniffing, while Sasuke looked down. "I thought my brother killing my entire clan was the worst. But you, Naruto, you had it even worse. How are you still sane?" he asked, causing him to frown. "I am not," he said, causing them to look at him. "What do you mean?" Sakura said. "Before I went to that department, a Yamanaka under the orders of the Hokage sealed off all the most painful experiences I have. Even still, all I remember is glimpses, and I am happy, because if I remembered more, I wouldn't be the same," he said, causing them to stay silent. He shrugged. "Enough of that. We need to sleep. It's important to save our strength," he said. With a nod, they slept in sleeping bags, with Naruto taking first watch. He stood with 2 kunai on his hands, his breathing slow, appearing almost dead. Morning came, with Team 7 preparing to move out. They erased all signs of their existence from their spot. He turned to them. "Ready?" he asked, causing them to nod. He nodded back and rushed off. "Move out," he said, his teammates following him. After an hour or so, Naruto suddenly stopped. He raised a curled fist, his teammates stopping as well. He looked around. "Stay here," he said, disappearing. They simply waited for him. Naruto stood on top of a branch, observing an Omegakure team below. With a smirk, he took out 2 of his kunai. He stood upside down the tree, then with a tug he fell down. As soon as he was on range he thrusted both kunai into 2 of the 3 members' throats. Blood gushed out, with the third teammate turning in shock, but soon did hand seals. Water release. Wild water wave. He yelled in anger, releasing a jet of water towards Naruto, which he dodged and did a wind release, vacuum great sphere. Sending a large orb of wind that crushed the ninja on a wall, the microscopic blades in the sphere killing him. He searched their bodies, trying to find the scroll. He smirked from his crouching position as he found it, but sighed as it was another heaven scroll. He soon frowned, however, at the sound of hissing. He turned only to jump back as a giant snake crushed the spot he stood. With a growl, he released many shuriken and did a wind release, gale palm, causing them to go faster, easily piercing the snake, killing it. He, however, found 3 more snakes rushing at him. He took out kunai with explosive notes and sent them at the beasts, chunks of flesh flying. Soon even more came, easily surrounding him. With a growl, he yelled, wind release, vacuum serial waves, releasing blades of wind wherever he looked from his mouth. He took the chakra handle and formed a Kase no Yaiba with it. He rushed left and right, killing snakes, until he came to the source of the problem. A humongous black snake capable of spitting out many others. He quickly took 100 explosive notes and rushed at the snake, using Chunin speed to slap it in different parts of his body. He then threw the rest inside its mouth and did a kai. With a large explosion, the snake was no more. That was a snake summon and not one of Anko's, Orochimaru, Sasuke, Sakura. He widened his eyes, rushing to them. He arrived, only to see Sasuke getting bitten by Orochimaru. Orochimaru turned to him with a smirk, hello Naruto-kun. Did you like my gift? Naruto growled, holding his sword, releasing his chakra. With a smirk, Orochimaru threw kunai at him, only for him to slice them in half, as he rushed at him at cage speed and decapitate him, only to turn into mud, a mud clone. He thought, dodging a punch. He went to swing at him, only for Orochimaru to duck and sent a kick at his palm, shattering the wood handle. Before the Kase no Yaiba dispersed, he swinged his arm at him, the blade released at him, cutting him in half, only to turn into mud again. He heard a cry of wind release, wind cutter, only for a wave of sharp wind to come his way, forcing him to use Kawarimi. Wind release, drilling air bullet. Naruto yelled, spitting spheres of wind at great speeds. Orochimaru dodged them, then quickly engaged Naruto in a taijutsu match. Meanwhile, Sakura was attending Sasuke, as she had made a temporary shelter and looked at the ongoing match, praying for Naruto to win and help Sasuke. Orochimaru noticed her, then with a smirk disappeared and appeared above her, ready to strike her with a kunai. Naruto cursed and appeared in front of him, grabbing his kunai arm and redirecting it at Orochimaru's own torso. However, he turned into sticky mad, with Orochimaru appearing above him. He tried to use his arm but failed, allowing Orochimaru to bite him in the neck. He yelled in pain, however, he used his free hand to make a Kase no Yaiba and sliced at Orochimaru's face, making a large scar from his cheek to his torso, causing him to scream in anger. He shunshined away, with Naruto collapsing to the ground. The terrified Sakura took him in, and placed him near Sasuke. 2 hours had passed after the encounter with Orochimaru, Sakura standing on guard with a kunai. She hoped they'd wake up soon. To her misfortune, an Otogakure team appeared. The leader, a man wrapped in bandages, spoke, "Give us Sasuke Uchiha," he said, with Sakura looking ready for a fight. He approached, causing her to smirk, but stopped. He and his team jumped over a patch of land, obviously moved to make a trap. Pathetic, he spoke, as he took a step, until he realized Sakura's smirk. The moment he stepped on the ground, she cut a nearby string, as a giant log fell down. Saku yelled, Zankua, releasing a blast of wind that destroyed the log, causing Sakura to gasp and him to smirk. He went to attack her, only to get a kick from Rock Lee. "Don't worry Sakura-chan. I will protect you with my life," he said. Sakura nodded, hoping Naruto would awake soon. Unbeknownst to them, inside Naruto's mind, a very unique scene unfolded. A white snake slithered around, going through the black hallways of what looked to be a castle. Eventually, he descended some stairs, which were slightly lit by aura-like red flames. It descended further until it found what appeared to be Naruto's consciousness, asleep before a large metal door. It was surrounded by ceiling tags, ceiling chains and other security measures. With a smirk, the snake sent an acidic stream that melted the central lock. Slowly, all the other locks opened. It had no idea what it unleashed. As soon as the door opened, a gold stream of power flew out, the flames lighting the room, clinging on it, getting absorbed from it, until a giant wolf's head flew out, incinerating the snake. Then, the most horrible memory kicked in. The snake had no idea what it just did, speeding the progress of unleashing the most horrible thing into the world. Naruto's memory, age 7. Warning. Graphic scene. If you can't stand rape, I suggest turning away. A 7-year-old Naruto could be seen running for his life. Behind him, a huge mob chased him, holding torches, pikes and whatever weapon they could use. Even ninjas were in the mob, holding katanas and kunai. Naruto ran, trying to go as far as he could with his little legs. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough. A number of kunai hit his legs and shoulder, forcing him to fall on the ground. The mob surrounded him and started beating him. Naruto cried, begging for the torture to stop, but it fell upon deaf ears. They carried on for hours, until it came to a halt. Naruto forced a small smile on his face, thinking it was over. However, the mob had other plans. Suddenly, 2 hands grabbed him and raised him in the air, the mob going to a direction outside the village. Somehow, no one noticed 100 villagers and shinobi leaving. Or they did, but didn't care. The mob lead him to a hill. There, they stripped him of his clothes and tied him up in spiked heated chains. The boy screamed as the hot metal pierced and pressed his body, burning his skin and flesh. However, he felt something press on his rear. Horror on his face at what it meant, he shakily turned to find a man with a wide grin on his face, ready to penetrate him. Please, I did nothing wrong, the boy muttered painfully, causing the man to scowl. Nothing wrong, nothing wrong. You killed my family. I am returning the favor, he yelled, pushing inside with a wider grin, while Naruto screamed in pain, tears flowing like a river. He kept thrusting, until he released inside the boy. The boy gasped, thinking it was over, but it continued, people taking turns, some even using the poor boy's mouth, when the boy wasn't yelling to stop. Eventually, they stopped and took off his chains. Naruto's mind was in a haze, laying in a puddle of blood and semen, his body going numb. However, he did feel the pain from a new set of hot chains. The villagers took the poor boy and tied him on a cross. Go back to hell, demon. They yelled, as they lit the cross on fire, with Naruto on it, trying to kill him like a witch. Naruto screamed loudly, chakra rolling of him, the painful experience activating it. Before he lost unconsciousness, which in his mind was dying, he saw with half-lidded eyes a furious Hokage and his Anbu cutting villagers and shinobi alike left and right. Forest of Death, 20 minutes after the arrival of Rock Lee. Sakura looked at the scene with fearful eyes. After Rock Lee's arrival, both Team 9 and 10 arrived, trying to help her. However, the Otogenins were too strong. A minute ago, Sasuke woke up, chakra rolling off him, asking her who did it. When Zaku pointed at him, he went to attack him. However, they all stopped as the heaviest pressure they ever felt fell on the area. They turned, noticing Naruto, gold chakra with a growing black tint rolling off him, reaching cage level. His skin was red, smoke rising from it. Dark lightning crackled around him, as the ground shook with power. He was slowly rising, his hair swapping colors, his nails turning into claws, his teeth into fangs. He opened his eyes, turned into a sickly gold with a slit, shining. He stood at his legs, his frame getting larger, cracks appearing on his skin, from which black light appeared. He started screaming, the ground shaking with power, as the curse mark on his neck glowed, a purple haze leaving it. The screams only got louder, going through the entire forest, the cracks widening. Then, with a final yell, he exploded in an orb of black light, to the horror of all. However, the orb stayed, before a thin gold beam rose to the sky, darkening it with clouds filled with lightning bolts, as a large earthquake struck the area. Winds howled, as the gold beam grew more powerful, roars coming from it. Soon, it decreased, going lower and lower, until it disappeared, revealing a figure. It was a man. He stood at 5 feet 9, with pitch black hair and a golden bang in the shape of a bolt. His eyes were void, gold with a slit, similar to a wolf's. His body was ripped, the muscles looking like they were made with a chisel and they could snap rocks in half. He didn't have sleeves and his pants were shorts. Suddenly, his eyes glowed, before he held his head and roared in the heavens, a black beam twice the size of the golden one rising. Everywhere in the forest, you could hear animals roaring as well. The beam of power was felt in the entire elemental nations, not to mention the entire existence. Orochimaru had just started the prophecy. Hokage Tower. Hiruzen widened his eyes, turning into the black beam, along with the rest of the room. Inside were Jiraiya, Minato, Kushina and all of Konoha's Chunin. Hiruzen looked in fear, feeling the very familiar power, the same as the one 5 years ago, only it was stronger and more potent. Minato and Kushina looked in fear, as their children were in the room, with the senseis worrying for their students. Hiruzen placed a hand on his chest. God have mercy on us all, he remembered, he thought. Makai. Makai was in an uproar. Lava was coming off the ground, the earth shook and the sky was surrounded by lightning. Every demon felt the power. Outside the gate to the 9th level stood a small demon army camp. They were the armies of the 9 Beu. Taken from their summoning realm, mutated, they served the 9 Beu and of course their master. When they felt the power, which shook the immovable 9th gate to its core, they rose, flaring their power in excitement. All hail the seed of Shinju. All hail the seed of Shinju. They roared in excitement. Their superior roared, enough. Demons of the seed, inform the rest of the 9 armies. He roared, getting more roars of approval. Bakai was no different. Many of the residents looked down from the clouds, seeing the black mist rising. The city was in a lockdown immediately, as gods turned to look at it. In a far corner of Bakai, a white marble tower laid. Inside, a group of what appeared to be elves rose from their seats, taking out their silver blades. The tree lives. The tree lives. They yelled. Their commander shouted, begin the plan. Start the preparation for the arrival of our god. He yelled, the forest of death. The Genins looked scared on the black beam. They didn't know what the hell was going on, they just knew Naruto was causing it. Soon, the beam died down, leaving Naruto panting, his fangs clenched shut, while his eyes scanned the clearing. A black aura surrounded him, as he seemed to be sniffing. Soon, he laid eyes on Zaku and disappeared, only for the Genins to hear a cry of pain. They turned and looked horrified at what they saw. On the ground, laid Zaku, his arms having massive cuts in different places. Blood flowed from him freely, as the elbow looked broken as well. Behind him was Naruto, who looked at his bloodied hands, then turned to Dosu. Dosu sent his strongest sound wave at him, only for Naruto to shrug it off. He reared his mouth back and released a roar that sent Dosu flying onto a tree, the tree cracking and breaking Dosu's ribs. He then turned to the female of the team, who was slowly backing away. His eyes looked at her up and down and he approached her, like a predator following his prey. Please, she said, collapsing to the ground, her arms covering her head. I'll do anything, she stuttered, only to yelp scared as Naruto grabbed her by the throat and picked her up, holding her in the air. He sniffed at her, his eyes glowing, his instincts kicking in. With a grin, he bit down on her neck, causing her to scream and lose consciousness. He dropped her to the ground, as he turned to Dosu. Give me your scroll and I will spare yours and that insect's life. The girl is mine though, a primal voice said, in a tone that said obey or die. Dosu simply nodded, threw him the scroll and grabbed Zaku and left. Naruto caught it, looking as it was an earth scroll, then made it disappear in a puff of smoke, as he dropped the spare heaven scroll near the Konoha team's feet. He turned to both Sakura and Sasuke. Let's go, he said with a growl, only for Sasuke to scowl and attack him, surrounded by dark chakra. Naruto sent a punch in his hand, creating a shockwave, then chopped his neck. He pressed 2 fingers on the seal, then destroyed it with a pulse of chakra. He grabbed Sasuke and Kin, then turned to Sakura. She simply nodded fearfully, following him as he disappeared in the trees. Shikamaru's fearful frame shook itself, as he grabbed the scroll. Troublesome former blonde, he said. After an hour of running, Team 7 appeared in the tower. He dropped Sasuke and Sakura to the ground, slapped a tag with a symbol on Kin's back, then gave the scrolls to Sakura, open them and throw them to the ground. A Chunin will come. Tell him to summon the Hokage, he said, before collapsing to the ground, his aura disappearing. Sakura did as he told, with Iruka appearing. Congratu, what happened? He yelled upon noticing the fallen Genins. See, call the Hokage. Sakura said, then fell to the ground, her physical and mental energy drained, as Iruka called a fellow Chunin to alert the Hokage. Naruto's mindscape. Naruto looked around his changed mindscape. No longer did it have the appearance of a dungeon, rather it looked like a dusty throne room of a castle. It was a long and wide hallway, made of black marble, filled with dust. Red banners were on the walls, the color worn off from decay, the cloth cut in many different places. The roof has a cylinder shape, with what appeared to be spider webs on it. Unlit chandeliers were hanged from the roof, the gold obscured with rust. He kept walking looking at the different sections, until he came across 10 circular steps. On top was a circle, with the throne in the middle. The throne appeared to be one of a conqueror. It was made of black metal, with what appeared to be 10 united tails as the back of the throne. The arms of the throne have a wolf head, the mouth open. Above the throne room, was a circular window. Surprisingly, the window's stained glass had his insignia on it. He looked at the throne again, noticing 2 things. 1. The left wolf head had a clear glass orb on its maws, while the right had what appeared to be a black chain ring. He tried pulling the ring first, but nothing happened. He then pulled the orb, however, with a tug, a gold light appeared from the orb, shooting off like a rocket and traveled around the room, all under Naruto's surprised gaze. Eventually, the orb slowed down, until it stopped 2 feet away from Naruto. A voice was heard from the orb, "Welcome." It said, its tone welcoming, yet demanding of respect. Naruto felt the power from this orb and unconsciously took a step back. What are you?" he asked, a laugh escaping from the orb. "Really, I thought you would know your ancestor," it said, playfully. Naruto raised his eyebrow. "I got many ancestors," he said, causing the orb to laugh. "Of course. How about this? I am the one who once shook the world to its core. I am the one whose existence changed everything. I am the one above all the ones," he said. Naruto thought the riddle and widened his eyes. He immediately fell to one knee. "Shinju-sama," he said. The orb turned into what appeared to be a man made of wood. The Shinju smiled. "No need to kneel before me, my legacy," he said, with Naruto standing up. "Where are we?" he said. The Shinju glowed a bit. "Your mind, or rather your reformed mind. Do you remember what happened?" he asked, with Naruto frowning. "All I remember is slicing Orochimaru, the rest are unclear pictures," he muttered. "Orochimaru did something stupid, which worked to our advantage and disadvantage. He awakened my power hidden in my will, which was placed on you. Right now, you are beyond a demigod. You are what you would be at the age of 15, he said, with Naruto widening his eyes. The bad thing is the way you activated your true power, along with the fact that at the age of 16, you will become a full, ageless god. The good thing is, it gives us time to get you used to your current and future power. Until the time comes to become the full Shinju, I shall reside within you," he said, with Naruto nodding. "I thank you for that. This power," he said, curling his palm into a fist, "it's so strong and potent, almost intoxicating. I keep hearing my instincts," he said. "Don't worry, you will learn to control it," he said. "Oh, by the way, while you got to the tower fueled by your instincts, you each made a slave," he chuckled, with Naruto blinking. "I did a what?" he asked. "A slave. As a god, much less a primordial one, you're allowed not only to take as many mates as you like, but also as many slaves too. And no, it can't be undone. Her fate is bound to yours. If you die, she dies. Luckily, it ain't the other way around," he explained, with Naruto sighing. "All right. Can't help it, I guess. Anything else I should worry in my current state?" he said, folding his arms. Shinju nodded. 1. You have an increased libido. 2. Demons will be drawn to your power, males will try to kill you, females dominate you. If you defeat them without killing them, they can be your slaves in both cases, or mates in female cases. Also, until you learn to control this power, the more you battle the crazier you will get. Once you learn to control it, only a strong battle will have this effect. Finally, you can now control 2 god weapons at the same time and 10 holy and demonic weapons, he said, with Naruto sighed even more. They continued conversing about Naruto's status. Tower. Naruto opened his eyes, yawning and stretching his arms. He looked around, noticing he was in a room inside the tower. With a yawn, he stood up, then looked down, growling as he ripped off the hospital robe from his body. He unsealed a pair of boxes from a seal, putting them on, then looked at his body in the mirror. He narrowed his now permanently gold eyes, while touching his black hair. "So, this is me at 15, he thought, then smirked. "God, do I look good," he said, then put on new clothes. He put on a simple blue bodysuit, however both pants and shirt were too short. He let the shirt as it was, defining his muscles. He taped white bandages on the part his pants no longer covered. He nodded to himself, as he clenched his fist. The preparations have begun, soon the world will bow to the power of the Alpha, he thought, releasing a burst of power, as his eyes shined. Tower. 5 days have passed since the beginning of the second part of the Chunin exams. Now we find all the genin who survived inside a small arena in the tower, hearing the Hokage's speech regarding the Chunin exams. However, many eyes were observing Naruto, regarding the power output he released. They didn't believe a mere human could release so much power, Jinchuriki or not. Whispers were flying in the air. Naruto paid them no mind, instead he tried to control his emotions. His memories had been fully unsealed and a terrifying fury was dwelling inside him, for the village, for his parents. He didn't know what he would do if he met either of those two, but the biggest possibility is that it would not be pleasant. His sisters were a complicated matter. He didn't hate them, unless you count how naive they were. However, if they somehow pissed him off, he'd show no remorse. He looked up a bit, seeing that the Chunin senseis were in the podium and next to the third stood Kushina and Minato. Kushina smiled a bit seeing Naruto looking at her. Naruto simply huffed, as he turned back, just in time to hear the proctor's explanation. The proctor was Gecko Hayate, a brown-haired Chunin that was always sick and Konoha's Kenjutsu master, since Naruto was an all-around fighter. These are the preliminary rounds. Due to your numbers, 3 of you will fight at once. The winner between the 3 will get a spot in the finals. There will be 12 matches. This board will draw names at random. Once the first match is selected, everyone except the contenders must go to the upper floor. He said, as he nodded to Anko. Anko nodded back and pressed the button. The board lit up, showing all the contenders in a line. It started going through names, until 3 popped up, everyone except Uchiha Sasuke, Akamaiki Choji and Ron Konjiki are to leave. He said, with the genins clearing out. Before he left, Naruto whispered, be careful. He said, only for Sasuke to nod. The genins stood in a triangle formation, preparing to fight. Begin, yelled Hayate. In an instant, Sasuke sent 5 kunai with explosive notes towards Ron, as he rushed at Choji. Choji used the human bullet tank to try and maul Sasuke. Sasuke jumped above it, while slicing with his jian at him, blood spurting out. Choji stopped the technique as he collapsed to one knee. I know you don't want to fight me, Choji. I don't want either. Just give up. No one will accuse you of surrendering to a stronger opponent, or because you don't want to hurt someone you know, he said, pointing his sword at him. Choji looked at him, then smiled slightly and nodded. He turned to Hayate. Proctor, I quit. He said, with Hayate nodding. He sent a thumbs up to Sasuke on his way to the infirmary. Sasuke turned to Ron, only to widen his eyes. Ron's shirt was burned in the sleeves, yet his arms looked fine. Sasuke narrowed his eyes, going through hand seals, fire release, great fireball. He said, spitting out a stream of flames, with Ron making a cross with his arms. The fire seemed to be held off by him. Sasuke jumped above the flames, swinging his sword downwards. To his surprise, Ron caught it. Sasuke looked at Ron's arm with widened eyes. Its skin was replaced by black steel, similar to the one Naruto's armor was made of. Ron smiled, steel release, impervious armor. He yelled, then used his second steel arm to send a fist Sasuke's way. It hit him in the shoulder, sending him flying. Sasuke stood up, holding his shoulder. What was that? He asked. Steel release, the specialty of my clan. He said with a smirk, we can surround our skin and body in tough steel. It can't be pierced by normal weapons. Sasuke thought for a second then smirked, we shall see. He said and rushed at him, making hand signs, as chakra appeared on his arm. He sent his fist forward towards the man's stomach, only for Ron to smirk, are you stupid? He asked, surrounding his stomach with metal, hearing the clang of Sasuke's fist. Sasuke smirked and yelled, lightning release, lightning rod. Ron widened his eyes, then yelled in pain as the metal amplified the electricity and burned his inside. He fell to the ground, as his eyes had rolled back. Sasuke sighed, but fell to one knee, holding his shoulder. Winner, Sasuke Uchiha. Hayate said, with a medic coming and leading Sasuke to the infirmary to be examined. The rookie 9 feet and team guy were watching the match with excited looks. Naruto merely stood next to Team 11, his hands folded, leaning against the wall with closed eyes. He was interested in what else Ron's steel release could do. So far, I know it turns the skin into black metal. The only weaknesses would be extreme heat, lightning and of course, weapons made of ascended metals, like the Raijin or the Kusanagi. He thought. He opened his eyes, as the proctor announced the next match, Narumi Namikaze, Sai and Darui. He said. As she passed Naruto she said with a smile, "Wish me luck Oni-sama." Only to get a huff, causing her to sadden a bit, along with her parents who noticed the exchange, if you could call it that. As she entered the arena, she narrowed her eyes at her opponents, observing the Kumo Nin has a sword, so he must be proficient in Kenjutsu and from the looks of it's made of chakra metal, thus skill in lightning jutsu is the most probable. As for him, his tanto also indicates such, however, I have no idea what that scroll is. Maybe Fuinjutsu skill, she thought, as she unsheathed her Kodaki, preferring to keep her other arm free. Darui slowly took his sword out, as Sai was ready with his scroll. Begin. Hey, it called, with Narumi speeding towards Darui, him doing the same, both of their blades coated in chakra. A loud clang was heard, as sparks flew from the clash. They struggled, trying to overpower each other but soon had to leap back as a lion made of ink crashed on their spot. He can animate his paintings. They thought, as Sai drew more and more lions, the beasts rushing at them. Narumi quickly cut down two, only to do a hand seal, fire release, great fireball. She yelled, releasing a large orb of fire on the monsters, melting them. Sai narrowed his eyes, as he continued drawing monsters, but sending them to Darui, before he unsheathed his tanto and rushed towards Narumi. Darui groaned, stabbing his sword to the ground and did hand seals, lightning release, thunderbolt. He said, both hands surrounded by orbs of light, as he released lightning bolts from them, destroying the beasts. He grabbed the blade and rushed at Narumi, considering her a bigger threat. She narrowed her eyes as she pushed Sai back, then she took out her tachi, holding both swords in her hands. A kenjutsu fight ensued, with both sides holding the ground and getting their share of scratches. Narumi however had enough. She sent a kick towards Sai's stomach, before using it to propel above Darui. She leaped back many yards, sheathing her blades and taking out kunai and throwing them. The kunais had explosive notes, forcing Darui to dodge. Sai wasn't so lucky, getting hit by them, as he was sent to the wall by the explosion. He struggled to get up, only for a kunai with a tag getting stabbed next to him. The tag lit up, as a blast of chakra was released, along with a bright flash and sound that sent him to unconsciousness. Darui went through hand seals, as to Narumi's surprise, black lightning run through his arm, lightning release, Black Panther. He yelled, a panther made of black electricity rushing Narumi's way. She frowned before she did hand seals, wind release, drilling air bullet. She yelled, spitting enormous orbs of wind. A large explosion was set off, as both genins rushed at each other. Narumi had her arm on her tachi's hilt, with Darui already swinging his blade. She narrowly dodged it, before unsheathing her blade, running at Daru's side, as blood gushed out. Darui fell to the ground, the pain leading to unconsciousness. Narumi sheathed her blade and wiped the sweat from her forehead. Winner Namikaze Narumi. Hey, it said, with the genins cheering. She smiled, nodding to her parents, only to frown as Naruto was in the same position. With a sigh she went back to her sister. She is good, Haku said, with Yakumo nodding. Naruto didn't respond, but inwardly he was thinking, Chunin skills in taijutsu and fuinjutsu, while kenjutsu and ninjutsu are almost jonin. Genjutsu mustn't be very high. I wonder what other tricks my sister has in her sleeves, he thought. Hayate announced the next match, Shikamaru Nara, Higurashi Temari and Sabaku no Temari. He said, the two women coming down instantly, as Shikamaru took his time getting there. When he did, he saw the two women yelling curses at each other. He simply stood to a corner and watched the battle unfold, as the proctor started the match. Tenten quickly threw kunai and shuriken at her, only for Temari to send them off with her fan. She opened it a bit, do you see this? This is the first moon. This match will be over on the third move, she said, with Tenten scowling. She took out two scrolls and jumped into the air, opening the scrolls. She started spinning while yelling, twin rising dragons. She released a hail of hundreds of various weaponry, with Temari blocking them off using her fan, now on the second moon. Tenten smirked, using chakra strings to control the weapons. However, it wasn't enough. Temari pushed them all back and opened the third moon. Sickle weasel, she said, releasing a large gale that trapped Tenten inside a vacuum midair. Hundreds of wind blades sliced her, forcing her into unconsciousness. Temari went below her and released the jutsu, wanting her to fall on her fan. However, she was forced to walk away. She turned, only to see her shadow, connected to Shikamaru's. She cursed, struggling to escape. However, Shikamaru kept forcing her into the direction of the wall. As she was closer to it and he was further, it didn't take her long to face the wall with the back of her head. He then threw his head back with force, her following him and getting her head slammed. He did this until she fell unconscious. Now you know how it is to show brutality, he said, then turned to the proctor, who nodded. Winner Shikamaru Nara. He said. No one said anything, but Shikamaru shrugged, going up the stairs slowly. Once he was up, Naruto sent him a nod of approval. Shikamaru nodded back and chose to sit next to him. You waited until one would be defeated once you noticed the sparks in their eyes, then used your skill to put the other down. And because she tried to go for overkill, you did so as well. A worthy strategy for a Nara, he said, with Shikamaru nodding with bored eyes. Thank you, he said, with Naruto nodding back and turning to the arena. Sabaku no Gaara, Rock Lee and Kai Konjiki, he said, coughing a bit, as the genins moved to the arena floor. Rock Lee fell into a taijutsu stance, Kai activated his bloodline on his arms and Gaara started leaking sand from his gourd. Begin. Hey, it said. Rock Lee instantly rushed to Gaara, sending a high kick, only to be blocked by sand. He continued sending a barrage of fists, until Gaara's sand caught his foot and sent him flying back. Gaara blocked a few metal orbs sent to his way by Kai. Kai rushed at him, followed by Lee. Gaara sent Lee flying, as he captured Kai with his sand. With a smirk and an outstretched arm, he surrounded Kai in a tight orb of sand, then turned his hand into a fist. Sand burial, he said, as the sand tightened. A crushing sound was heard, along with the cracking of metal and the screams of Kai. The observers looked with wide eyes, as blood flew out of the sand, with some looking in excitement. Like Naruto, Gaara let the sand fall, as Guy turned down to Lee. Lee, take him off, he said, causing Lee to widen his eyes. But Guy-sensei, you said only in cases of extreme emergencies. Guy simply grinned with a thumbs up. I will allow it this once, he said with Lee nodding. He removed his weights from his legs and dropped them, cracks forming to the shock of the watchers. Lee smirked, rushing at high speeds, catching Gaara off guard. He managed to get a few hits, only for cracks to form on Gaara's face, which slowly healed. You can't pass my second defense, he said, smirking and sending more sand on him. Lee dodged it and muttered, sorry Guy-sensei, I have no choice. He made a hand seal and yelled, gate of opening, activate, he said, rushing at Gaara at even more impressive speed and kicked Gaara to the air, to Gaara's surprise. He then appeared behind him, capturing him in a bear hug, then sent both of them to the ground hard while rotating. Lee struggled to get up, as Gaara looked pissed. He sent a wave of sand that smacked Lee around. Lee dodged after a while. Gate of rest, activate. Gate of life, activate, he said. Energy started running off him, as his eyes turned white and his skin red. He disappeared, until Gaara felt a powerful kick, that shattered part of his armor. He was sent flying, only to get kicked again. This continued, with Gaara getting smacked around, until Lee punched him and kicked him at the same time. Reverse lotus, he yelled, falling to the ground in pain. He tried standing up with difficulty, feeling the increased fatigue, as Gaara growled, trying to stand up. On the stands, the genins looked with open mouths. They never seen such a heated match. Naruto looked with a grin on his face. This is a very nice battle. Lee has impressed me so far, he thought. The Junins were also impressed, while Kakashi berated Guy for teaching him so many gates. Gaara yelled in pain, a crazed look on his face. He sent sand at Lee, with Lee cursing and disappearing in pain. He looked at him then yelled, Gate of Pain, activate, he said, rushing at Gaara faster, hitting him with everything he got. Gaara kept screaming, until he was sent straight to a wall. Sand exploded around him, a large tidal wave of it going towards Lee. Lee punched through it, as green energy rushed around him. Gate of closing, activate, he yelled, sending a punch that shattered the ground in Gaara's face, cracking his entire armor and sending him to the ground. He tried standing up, fury in his eyes, as Lee collapsed to the ground. He sent his sand at him, surrounding his legs and breaking them, releasing yells of pain. Gaara was gonna crush him, until Guy took him. Hayate shouted, due to the interference of a sensei, Sabaku no Gaara is the winner. Gaara scowled, turning one to Naruto, only to get a nod. He nodded back, going up to the stands again. Shikamaru shuddered, as did most of the genin. He heard the proctor speak, Ni Yugito, Akatsuki and Haku Momiki. He said, the genin's going, with Naruto muttering a good luck to Haku, getting a slight nod. Begin, said the proctor. Haku looked at her opponents taking out her senbon and throwing them quickly. She sent a small nod towards Yugito, who raised her eyebrow but nodded back. Haku rushed at Akatsuki, throwing senbon, causing the large boy to dodge using Kawarimi. When he reappeared, he had to raise an earth wall, courtesy of a great fireball from Yugito. He growled, then slammed his hands in the ground, earth release, earth golem. He said, sending the golem towards Yugito. He then rushed, with speed not thought possible for his body, at Haku, throwing punches at her. She blocked one and winced in pain, dodging the rest. Meanwhile, Yugito was battling the golem. While quite slow, it was durable and strong. It was a stalemate until Yugito had enough. She jumped back a few feet, surrounding herself with lightning chakra. She rushed at it, her arm outstretched. Lariat, she yelled, tearing the golem's head off. She kept skidding at fast speeds, dispelling the chakra, then jumped and did hand seals, fire release, phoenix sage flower nail crimson. She yelled, spitting out fire and releasing shuriken at the same time. The flaming shuriken rushed at Akatsuki, causing him to raise another wall, blocking him effectively. He did hand seals, earth release, flying thrown stones. He said, the wall breaking into stones, flying towards them. Haku did hand seals, water release, gunshot. She said, firing water balls at the stones, destroying most of them, while having to dodge some. At the same time, Yugito sped at Akatsuki, forcing him into a taijutsu match. Then, Haku did hand seals, water release, water colliding wave. She yelled, making a water vortex and sending a wave towards her enemy. Yugito smirked, sending a fast punch at a pressure point on Akatsuki's leg, causing him to fall on one knee. She then jumped above him, then sent him in the direction of the water with a powerful step kick. Akatsuki crashed headfirst into the wave, and when he came out he skidded to the ground, his eyes rolled behind his head. Both women then turned to each other, Haku panting, while Yugito simply smirked, falling into a stance. Some genin cheered, others frowned upon the teamwork, but nonetheless clapping ensued. Naruto clapped as well, satisfied at the way this match was going so far. That Iwa Nin was good. Earth ninjutsu, good speed and strength, complementing his all-around style. He was just unlucky. Those two control 4 of the 5 elements together. Their teamwork was good, even if they don't know each other. Yugito's close combat kept him at a distance, while Haku's long-range skill supported her. Those two are good, however, they both now know each other's perks. And Haku is meant to lose, for despite that Kumo Nin being an all-around fighter, she possesses the Nibi no Nekomata, from what I sense, he thought. Yugito looked at Haku, oh, don't tell me that's it. This match is too good for me to win just by you falling unconscious, she said. Haku smirked, preparing herself as white-blue chakra was released, the arena getting colder, don't underestimate me. She said, her eyes glowing with an ice-blue color. Yugito smirked, fire surrounding her as lightning cackled, her eyes glowing with chakra, I could say the same to you. She said, rushing at high speeds at her. Haku rose her hand, certain kill ice spears. She said, spikes rising meters in front of Yugito. She frowned and jumped above them. Haku turned her hand into a fist, the spikes blasting off towards her. She widened her eyes, fire release, great fireball. She released a giant fireball towards the spikes, an explosion ensuing. However, from the smoke came a few, dodging them, but getting a deep scar on her left bicep. She growled, diving into the ground, then with a pulse of chakra from her legs, she blasted towards Haku, turning her nails into claws. Haku cursed, making a sword of ice. They clashed, but it was clear Yugito held the advantage. She dodged a swing, to slice at her legs. She then sent a kick at her head, throwing her back. She placed a hand on her hip, give up. She said. Haku rose, never. Then did a hand seal, secret technique, demonic mirroring ice crystals. She yelled, as ice mirrors surrounded Yugito in a dome. Haku's reflection appeared on every mirror, give up, you can't track my movements. Yugito scanned around, only to get a senbon at her shoulder. She growled, turning only to get another at her leg. This continued for a minute, until Yugito was a pincushion. Yugito growled, chakra rolling off her, enough. She yelled, jumping high into the air, forming hand seals, fire release, intelligent hard work. She shouted, sending a small fireball at the ground. As soon as it touched the surface, a large explosion appeared, a fiery blast incinerating all the mirrors. As soon as it was over, Yugito stood, part of her clothes burned, Haku below her, also burned, immobile. Hayate nodded, winner is ni Yugito. Yugito nodded, going up the stairs. All the genins were gawking at such a battle. Naruto smirked, his eyes closed, oh yay, definitely the Jinchuriki of the Nibi. Only the Jinchuriki of the Nibi, Yonbi and Kyubi, along with Uchiha clan members have shown such power over fire, he thought. He soon turned his head to the announcement of the next match, Sakura Haruno, Ino Yamanaka and Inoue Orohime. He said, the girl's going down. Naruto looked at Orohime intently. She stood at 5 feet 2, with brown eyes and long burnt orange hair. She had a curvaceous figure, but what caught Naruto's attention were her large breasts. Goddamn, those could only be rivaled by the ones Tsunade Senju has, he thought. She wore what appeared to be a white battle dress. Suddenly, she looked at him, he looked back. She blushed slightly and turned back at her opponents. Naruto suddenly felt his instincts growling to tame her, but he pressed them down, shaking his head, as the proctor said, begin. With a cough. Inoue looked at her opponents with worry. Ino and Sakura were looking at each other with lightning shooting from their eyes. They immediately charged at each other, starting a taijutsu match. They fought with punches, kicks and kunai. They seemed evenly matched, until Ino did a sweep kick that sent Sakura to the ground, then jumped on her and kneed her stomach. Sakura yelled in pain and used kawarimi. Ino turned only to shoot 5 kunai at 5 Sakuras, with them turning to smoke. She did the same tactic 3 times, until Sakura sucker punched her face. Ino stumbled back, sending a few shuriken at her. Sakura dodged them, as she also went back. Ino then used her family's jutsu, while sending 2 kunai her way. She tried to dodge, but found herself stuck as Ino entered her head, then left just moments before the kunai struck her. Sakura gasped in pain, falling to the ground. Ino went her way and headbutted her, only to hold her head in pain as blood flowed from it. She turned to see Sakura unconscious. She then panted, turning to her opponent, only to get hit by a glowing orb of light, right in her forehead. She dropped unconscious, as Orohime had a hand forward. She gasped and approached her, tapping her a bit. She then smiled awkwardly, Proctor-san. I think she's out, she said, with Hayate nodding. Winner Inoue Orohime. He then turned to the Hokage, who nodded. Hayate nodded back and said, there will be a 10-minute break, for all those with unfinished business and for refreshments. He said, with the genins going to converse with the winners. Naruto looked at Shikamaru, who was asleep. He simply shook his head, closing his eyes, but opening them again at the sound of an, excuse me. Quote. He turned, only to find Orohime. He looked at her, congratulations on your match, he said, causing her to smile, why thank you. She said, then looked at him with a tilt of her head, are you Uzumaki Naruto? She asked, with him nodding. She raised her arm, pleasure to meet you. I am Inoue Orohime, she said. Naruto took her arm and laid a kiss on it, causing her to blush madly, it is a pleasure, Orohime-chan. He said with a smirk. She simply nodded, as she poked her fingers together, good luck in your match. She stuttered out, rushing off, with Naruto smirking. Inside though, he wondered, Inoue, where have I heard that name before? He thought. Soon the break finished. Hayate coughed, all right. Now, it is the turn of Sabaku no Kankuro, Menma and Tower. It is the turn of Sabaku no Kankuro, Menma and Rias Gemstrong. He said. As the genins were going down, Naruto couldn't keep his eyes off her. She was certainly one of the most breathtaking women he had ever laid eyes on. She had long crimson hair, the color of blood and blue eyes, 2 sapphires in a sea of white. She had an amazing body, with wide hips, a perfect rear and massive breasts, as big as Tsunade's, to his surprise. She wore a red skirt, connected to a white and purple shirt. She also wore white stockings and brown boots. Her casual clothing draws some confusion but mostly stares. As she walked, she gave a wink to Naruto. He didn't do anything on the outside, but on the inside, he was trying to calm down, as 70% of his inner self was telling him to go down there and claim her, while the other 30% to watch out, as her power seemed off. He kept that warning for later, as the proctor said, begin. With another cough, his 164th so far. Menma, a boy of medium height, with maroon hair and brown eyes, wearing a blue bodysuit, with silver armor, and Kankuro whistled as they looked at her. Menma, the third person in the team of Naruto's sisters, slowly approached her winking, "Hey babe. Want to go have some fun later on?" he said, wiggling his eyebrows. She simply smirked, raising her finger in a "come here" motion. The boy simply smirked, and when he was a few feet away, she disappeared, only to reappear, snapping her fingers. The ground where Menma stood exploded in a flash of red light. Once it was gone, only ash stood there. She turned to Kankuro, her palm lighting up with red energy. He dropped to the ground, raising his arms in pure terror. I surrender. He cried out. Rias simply smirked, the energy disappearing. Hayat shook his head, coughing. Winner Rias Gemstrong, he said, with Rias going up the stairs. As she passed Naruto, a smirk formed on her face. Naruto smirked as well, though on the inside, his alarms were going haywire. What was that energy? It felt like Yuki, which is impossible, yet more condensed, powerful and destructive. It wasn't aura either. No holy being uses power in the open like that. Could she be a metahuman, possessing unique energy hybrid? I will need to learn more during the finals, he thought. Hayat said, cutting him from his train of thought. Kurotsuki, Sasam Fuma and Neji Hyuga. He said, with Naruto turning at the Fuma name, a Fuma. He thought, looking at her. She had long orange hair and brown eyes. She would look like a relative to Orochimaru, if her figure wasn't as childish. Yet again, she isn't older than 13. Naruto thought. She wore a violet sleeveless shirt, olive shorts and a blue hat. She stood into a stance, eyeing her opponents, as Kurotsuki did the same with a smirk, and Neji fell on his gentle fist stance. Begin. Neji was the first to act, rushing towards Sasam, hoping to deal with her in one attack. He sent a palm thrust towards her chest, only for her to use Kawarimi. She reappeared on another part of the arena, sending kunai at him. He blocked them with one of his own and rushed, but had to dodge a great fireball from Kurotsuki. He frowned and went to her, she doing the same, her hands coated in rock. She sent a fist forward, only for Neji to dodge and send a palm strike to her arm, only for her to raise her fist, punching the rock. The match continued for a while, Kurotsuki's rock defense keeping Neji to a stalemate. However, none of them noticed Sasam. Silently, like a true ninja, she kept doing a large amount of hand seals. Once she reached the ram seal, a large pulse of chakra was sent out, alerting him, but it was too late, bringer of darkness. Suddenly, Neji and Kurotsuki's field of vision was covered in darkness. Neji tried to use his Byakugan, only to see it not working to his horror. Both him and Kurotsuki then suddenly felt a slash at their bicep, causing them to hold it in pain. Neji then felt a stab at his palm, as Kurotsuki felt one on her right leg. This kept going, with Kurotsuki and Neji unable to find her, even with their other sense. After a slash at his other palm, Neji had enough and started spinning, 8 trigrams palms revolving heaven. He yelled, forming a spiraling dome of chakra. Sasam, who was close to hit him again, was sent back from the force. Kurotsuki, feeling the spike of chakra, made hand seals, earth release, earth dragon bullet. She said, a giant dragon of stone rushing at the chitin. It hit it, causing an explosion. With the genjutsu vanishing after Sasam was hit, Kurotsuki could now see clearly, so could Neji. Kurotsuki took out a kunai and rushed at Sasam, Neji following. Sasam growled as she threw shuriken at him, then kunai with explosive notes. Earth release, earth-style wall. 8 trigrams palms revolving heaven. The shuriken bounced off and the explosive notes cancelled the jutsu, but did not halt the approach. Sasam skidded back a few feet, taking out 4 ringless kunai, holding 2 on each hand. Both Kurotsuki and Neji attacked her, forcing her to the defensive. Sasam lasted for a while, but eventually she was overpowered by the combined assault. Neji with 3 palm strikes closed off some chakra points, then Kurotsuki with an uppercut to her chin, threw her in the air, with Neji appearing above, a palm strike to her chest, sending her straight to the wall. However, Neji spat out blood, as Kurotsuki appeared behind him, a kunai on his ribs. She then grabbed him from the neck and threw him on the ground, taking out the kunai in a gush of blood. As Neji fell, she did hand seals, water release, water trumpet. She said, releasing a large jet of water that crashed headfirst into Neji, pushing him into the ground. Once the water cleared, Neji was unconscious. "Winner Kuretsuki," said Hayate, causing her to smirk and go up the stairs. As the match ended, Naruto, along with Shikamaru and Sasuke, who had returned with a bandaged shoulder, were each thinking the same lines, that Iwa Nin is more powerful than the average Chunin. She can use taijutsu with finesse and can command 3 chakra natures. And that Fuma clan member was also capable. Her strategy was flawless in that situation, but she should have went for the kill. If not, she could have at least attacked a point that would send them to unconsciousness. Oh well, maybe the next match will be even better, they thought. However, drops of sweat fell on the Genins' faces, as the arena's temperature grew as cold as when Haku released her power. Hayate looked alarmed. "Inuzuka Kiba, Namikaze Naruto and Uzumaki Naruto," he said. Every person went to the end of the railing, as Naruto was slowly walking towards the arena. Sasuke looked scared and so did Shikamaru. As they went down, they formed a triangle shape. Kiba looked smug, Naruto looked sad and Naruto looked agitated. "Begin," said Hayate. Kiba looked at Akamaru. "You won't be needed right now, Akamaru. Sit nearby until I fight with the Namikaze girl," he said, then turned to Naruto and sneered, "Yo loser. Do us all a favor and just give up," he said, with Naruto merely turning to Naruto. She looked to the ground then to him. "I agree, Oni-sama. I know you're strong, but there is no way you can defeat me," she said. Up in the stands, Hiruzen, Kakashi, Sasuke and Shikamaru sighed. Well, there goes the chance to avoid a bloodbath, they thought. Naruto's bangs were covering his face. However, soon chuckles started rising, then laughter. It kept going louder, as Naruto looked at her, a crazed grin at his face. He narrowed his eyes as his grin widened, as dark gold chakra rolled of him in waves. In just a few seconds, it reached S-rank output, causing Kiba to fall unconscious from the sheer power, along with some remaining weak genins, the strongest ones falling to their knees, as the senseis and the Hokage sweated. He bared his fangs to her, as his eyes glowed. "No match, you say? Let's put that theory to the test, shall we?" he said in an eerie tone, as he disappeared. Suddenly, Naruto felt her nose break, as a punch from Naruto sent her flying into a wall. Spider webs cracked as she slowly rose. Naruto placed an arm on his hip, his face angry. "You know, I was gonna use Goken here, or if I fought you or your sister, the flying swallow. It seemed fitting to be defeated by your precious father's style. However," he said, falling into a stance that made some Junin and the Hokage widen their eyes in fear, "you made me change my mind. I haven't used this style for 2 years. Bound to make a spectacle," he said, disappearing. He rushed at Naruto, sending a fist at her arm, causing her to dodge, then jumping over a sweep kick, only to get hit in the stomach by a high kick. She was sent flying. However, Naruto appeared behind her in an instant and backhanded her to the other side. He then appeared above her and sent a jump kick, dropping her to the ground. He then grabbed her and threw her slightly into the air, then sent a repeating flurry of punches right into her gut, blood coming out of her mouth. Up on the stands, Minato was tightly holding the railing, sweat forming on his face and fear in his eyes. He had told Naruto during the break not to aggravate Naruto under any circumstances, yet she just straight up told him he's weaker than her. He knew that Naruto was strong as him. He only prayed that Naruto would not kill her. Kushina, on the other hand, was holding her mouth in fear, as tears went down her eyes. She felt flashbacks of her time with Naruto, then saw Naruto, all alone, beaten up. She cried out, "Stop it, Sochi. Please," she yelled. Sarutobi only shook his head. He didn't want Naruto to kill her, but he couldn't stop him. Naruto kept punching her, as blood flew down on his face. Then he sent one strong punch to her face, then an uppercut to her chin, "Rising Dragon," he said, launching her high in the air. As she came down, she got hit by a flurry of spinning kicks from Naruto in midair, tornado whirlwind leg. He yelled. He disappeared and appeared on the ground. As she came crashing, he released a powerful step kick, high-level leg blade kick. He said, as Naruto went flying inside the wall. He slowly walked towards the rubble, but stopped as a large killer intent fell on the arena, as a large blast of red yukai was released from the rubble. He dodged it, watching as it made a huge dent in the wall, then turned to Naruto with a smirk. Naruto was surrounded by a thick veil of red yuki, her eyes blood red with slits, 3 yuki tails flowing behind her. She released a roar towards his way, shattering the ground, yet he stood still. He simply cracked his knuckles, then dashed at her, she doing the same. She swiped her claws at him, only for him to dodge and punch her face. She reared back, then sent him a powerful kick, making him skid back a few feet. She jumped at him, only for him to do a backflip, kicking her in the air. Then, as soon as his leg touched the ground, he pushed forward, doing a front flip, kicking her again, crashing her into the ground. He aimed his open palm towards her, as a golden chakra blast struck her at point-blank range. He then grabbed her from the neck, the yuki barely damaging him, as he placed his hand at her stomach. Then, he sent a large wave of chakra, as the world around them turned white. Naruto opened her eyes, groaning. She blinked slowly, trying to remember what happened. All she could remember was pain and nothingness. However, memories of the battle in her 3-tailed state came rushing to her. She was surprised Naruto handled her like it was nothing. She looked down, only to her widened eyes to see she was tied in black chains. She turned, seeing the chains connected to Naruto's back. He turned at her. "Good, you're awake," he said, then turned to Kyuubi. She did the same, only to widen her eyes in surprise. The cage was gone and so was the seal. In the place of an enormous 9-tailed fox, stood a small fox, the size of a dog. It also looked scared. "So, look how the almighty Kyuubi no Kitsune, leader of the demonic Kitsune, has fallen. I don't blame you though. Instead, I congratulate you for not warning dear Naruto here of who I really am. Now, I give you a choice. Give me what I came for freely and you will live another day. I will even give you a gift. Try and stop me and you will die," he said with narrowed eyes. "What do you say, Kurama?" he said, causing the now identified Kurama to widen his eyes. Then, he bowed lowly, his ears falling. "I am under your command," it said, a large orb of red energy coming out of its body, entering Naruto. Naruto smirked, releasing a burst of power, as his dark gold chakra turned slightly darker. He smirked as he sent a pulse towards the fox. Kurama widened its eyes, as it started glowing, feeling pain. He then turned to Naruto. "Once I leave your body will fall unconscious. Be lucky I won't kill you. I won't kill your sister either, as long as neither of you stand in my way. Tell your sister to give up her match, or I will break her too, as I did you. If she doesn't her life will be fine," he said, causing Naruto to frown. "What about Tusama and Kasama?" she asked, only for him to growl, causing her to yelp. "Next time you mention them in my face like they did nothing, you will die," he promised, then continued. "As for them, they will pay," he said, then turned to Kurama. "You know what to do, Kurama," he said, as he disappeared, with the fox nodding. He turned to the shocked Naruto and smirked at her, then roared in the sky before his body disappeared. Naruto stood there for a second, then her world turned white. Everyone looked with open mouths as Naruto touched Naruto's stomach. Suddenly, they saw the chakra of the Kyuubi disappearing completely, Naruto collapsing to the ground and Naruto releasing a large wave of power, as his body crackled with lightning. He smirked, looking at the unconscious Naruto, then at the proctor. It took him a few seconds to realize, as he turned to Kiba, only to notice him still unconscious, having taken the full effect of Naruto's power. Winner is Uzumaki Naruto, he said, with Naruto smirking and going up the stands. Everyone threw him looks of fear, with some women lust, but he ignored them all. He simply leaned back on the wall, closed his eyes and thought of his next plans. He did hear, however, the next match, Yakumo Kurama, Hyuga Hinata and Sugetsu Hozuki, he said, with the genins going to the arena. "Begin," he said. Hinata and Yakumo nodded slightly at each other, as Hinata rushed at Sugetsu. She then threw a jab at him, only to widen her eyes, as she pierced his arm. But instead of blood, only water flew. She then dodged, thanks to her Byakugan, a kick from Sugetsu. Sugetsu took out his blade, blocking shuriken courtesy of Yakumo. She frowned and took out a notebook, along with an ink brush. "Hinata, stall him," she said, as she started drawing. Hinata nodded, going toe-to-toe with Sugetsu, despite the boy's superior strength and range. However, she never hit him once, too afraid to hurt him, or not knowing if it could work. Sugetsu noticed this and opened his arms midway to her attack, his chest wide open. She gasped, her eyes stopping her attack. He smirked, sending a strong punch to her stomach, causing her to gasp. He then grabbed her head and planted it face first into the ground with a smirk. Hinata went numb, her eyes rolled back. Sugetsu turned to Yakumo, only for his words to be covered in darkness. His body was turning to water against his will and he heard a shout of, "This is for Hinata." Before he screamed in pain as lightning passed through his liquid body. In the real world, Sugetsu held his head in pain, as Yakumo had drawn a picture of a blinded, liquid Sugetsu getting hit by electricity. Eventually, Sugetsu fell unconscious from mental breakdown. Yakumo then approached Hinata and bowed to her, muttering an apology. Hayate looked towards Anko, having her do the final roll, as he said, "Winner is Yakumo Kurama." As she went upstairs, Hayate looked at the remaining names, Shino Aburame, Suzumbachi Kamizuru and Simui. He said, "The 3 genins going down." Naruto raised an eyebrow at Simui. She was standing at a medium high, with shoulder-length blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. He noticed her nice body and her growing D-cup breasts. He shook his head, feeling hot again. Damn. I know Shinju-sama said an increased libido, but this is ridiculous, he thought. He simply observed as Hayate coughed and said begin. Simui took out her tanto, covering it in lightning chakra. Both use insects for their attacks. And from what I see, they hold animosity towards each other. Cool. I will stay back and wait for the victor, she thought. Suzumbachi summoned a swarm of bees, as Shino released his Kikaichu from his body. The insects swarmed and attacked each other, as Shino rushed at Suzumbachi. She tried to dodge a punch, only to fail, then get a kick on her ribs and a punch on her shoulder. She jumped back and summoned bees that shot their stingers at him. He got pierced, only to reveal the insect clone. The insects again swarmed the bees. Shino appeared behind Suzumbachi and punched her back. He then took out a kunai and stabbed her, only for her to disappear in a kawarimi. He dodged a wild swing, blocked another one, then twisted her arm, making her drop her kunai and falling to the ground. However, she summoned a bee with an explosive note and detonated at point-blank range. The only thing that remained were insects, that bit into her and drained her chakra. She tried fending them off, but due to her distraction, Shino released more Kikaichu at her. She eventually passed out from chakra exhaustion. He heard Simui say, "Cool battle. Now surrender, or your insects will get hurt," she said, her tanto at the back of his neck, her palm aiming at the insects, with lightning surrounding it. Shino said, "It is only logical to surrender. My insects come first. Proctor, I give up," he said, with Hayate nodding, "Winner Simui." He said, with Simui sheathing her tanto. Shino nodded at her, she nodding back. Hayate coughed, "I am sorry to say this, but due to the unfair numbers, one more match of 1 versus 1 will be done," he said, looking at the board. Inoue Orochimaru and Yakumo Kurama, he said, "the 2 girls going down. Begin." Inoue looked at Yakumo, then nodded with a smile. Yakumo nodded back, sending shuriken at her, preparing her chakra. Inoue dodged them, then, knowing what Yakumo would do, raised a barrier made of yellow chakra. Yakumo smirked, "You think that will stop me?" she said, releasing her genjutsu. Nothing happened. Yakumo looked on with wide eyes. What? She thought, with Inoue smiling. The barrier turned into an orb, that blasted its way towards Yakumo. She held out her arms, only to fall back, yelling in pain. Inoue kept sending more balls of energy at her, until she fell unconscious. She simply bowed with a frown of sadness. "Winner Orochimaru Inoue," said Hayate, coughing and nodding to Anko as they both jumped down. "All winners come here," he said. As the genins went down, Naruto thought, "Too bad Yakumo lost. I knew it from the start though. She was low on chakra since she battled recently, not to mention her body isn't free of its problem yet. But I am interested in how that barrier blocked the genjutsu, along with her ability." Naruto thought about Inoue. As he came down, the proctor pointed at the box in Anko's hand. "Each of you will draw a paper from there. We will use it to see who you will battle and in what turn. Begin," he said as each of the genins took out a paper. 5, said Sasuke. 6, said Gaara. 3, said Shikamaru. 7, said Inoue. 8, said Simui. 2, said Narumi. 10, said Kuretsuki. 4, said Rias. 1, said Naruto. 9, said Yugito. Hayate gulped at the matches, especially the first one. First match, Uzumaki Naruto vs Namikaze Narumi. Second match, Nara Shikamaru vs Rias Gemstrong. Third match, Orochimaru vs Samui. Fourth match, Yugito vs Kuretsuki. Alright. Those are the matches. Gaara will fight the winner of the first match and Sasuke the one of the second. After that, the winners of match 3 and 4 will fight. That person will go directly to the final. The other two will fight so that one will go to the final. You have 1 month to prepare. Good luck to all, he said. Most of the genin turned to Naruto, who didn't look pleased one bit. He simply sent a nod to the Sandaime, as he went off. So, fate has deemed fit for me to fight my sister. Alright, she will fall before me, like all the sheep have fallen before the wolf, he thought. Hokage Tower. Naruto stood across the Hokage's office, his eyes narrowed. He immediately came to the Hokage's office, stopping only to get a new mask, as his old one got destroyed. His narrowed eyes shone with clear annoyance and anger, for the two people next to Hiruzen. Leaning next to a wall was Kakashi. Hiruzen coughed a bit as he sat in his chair. Naruto-kun, I would like to ask you a few questions. He said, with Naruto not changing his attitude, is this about Orochimaru and my newfound power and personality? He said, causing the room to widen their eyes, but Hiruzen nodded nonetheless. He sighed, I met that annoying snake on the second part. He had just branded Sasuke with a cursed seal, so I fought him. He used a diversion to fool me and planted a cursed seal to me as well. He said, causing Kakashi to widen his eyes, why didn't you say anything? We must seal it immediately. He yelled, causing Naruto to turn at him, forcing him to silence, oh really? Think I don't know that? He said with sarcasm, then turned back to the Hokage, but there's no need. The Hiki was destroyed. However, the memory seal broke, he said, causing Kakashi and Hiruzen to gasp. Kushina blinked, what memory seal? She asked with Naruto turning towards her with a scowl, after I turned 6, the beatings became very unpleasant. So much, that before I went under the Hokage's command, I had my memory sealed by a powerful memory seal. That seal also held my special power, which reappeared today, he said. Hiruzen sighed, but Minato looked at Naruto with narrowed eyes, getting one in return. What did you do to Naruto? The seal has disappeared, he said, with Naruto smirking. I took the Kyuubi's power. He said, causing them to widen their eyes in shock, all except Hiruzen. What do you mean? Asked Minato, as Naruto spiked his power, causing them to get scared. That is for me to know. He then turns to the Hokage, Hokage-sama, tomorrow I will leave the village. I am going for some training, he said, causing Hiruzen to nod, alright, but before you go, you need to talk to the Inuzuka and Yamanaka clan heads for the marriage proposal, also Hiashi-sama wants to see you, he said, with Naruto scowling but nodding. He rose, then turned to Kakashi, make sure Sasuke's curse seal is fully suppressed. I don't want to deal with a mini Orochimaru in the middle of my match, for I might kill him, he said, leaving the room, as the rest looked in shock. Castle Takezo. Naruto groaned as he sat on his armchair in the living room. He passed 3 hours talking to the Hyuga, Yamanaka and Inuzuka clan heads. The only one he came to an agreement with was the Inuzuka, as she didn't care for anything, rather for his support in harsh times and to marry her daughter to a true alpha, with him chuckling at the last part, as she was referring to his wolf alias. The Yamanaka was too prideful and overprotective. He was gloating about his daughter's beauty and was demanding from Naruto too many things for him to even consider agreeing. For example, he wanted his clan to give them a shipment of flowers once per month. Why in the world would he do that? And for what? Sure. The girl was interesting and cute, but she wasn't as strong as he expected, which even that wasn't much, not to mention she seemed to be turning into a Naruto fangirl, like Hinata, to his disliking. Speaking of Hinata, his conversation with the Hyuga was interesting. He wanted to talk about the possibility of giving Hinata to him as his wife, which Naruto wasn't sure. However, the advantages Hiashi pointed out were interesting to say the least. If he married Hinata, or made her his slave, he wasn't sure yet, he could have the entire Hyuga clan under his command, something he would like for the wars to come. All Hiashi asked was to take care of Hinata, protect his clansmen and to kill the Hyuga elders, for the plan to work. He would think about it later. Right now, he needed to rest a bit, for it would be a good night tonight. He turned to see Haku reading a book, as Zabuza was resting on the couch. He yawned, "Yo Zabuza, from what I learned, the new Mizukage will be coming to watch the Chunin exams, in order to set up an alliance with Konoha." He said, gaining Zabuza's interest, "I hear she will also bring a new ninja swordsman of the mist." He finished, with Zabuza grinning, "Well, I now can't wait for the exams." Haku, he yelled, rising up, as she rose with a yelp, "Come, we're gonna start training, so that next time, you won't lose." He said, with Haku sighing and nodding. Naruto smirked, "All right, those two now have something to do. As for me, I got work to do," he said, vanishing. Outskirts. Naruto stood at the outskirts of the village. He was waiting for Gaara to come, knowing he took his messenger bird. It was early in the night, the moon having just risen. He looked at it, then turned where he felt a chakra signature. He smirked as he saw Gaara appearing from a sand shunshin. Gaara folded his hands. "What do you want?" he said, with Naruto smirking and appearing in front of him to his surprise. "Your mother," he said, before punching Gaara in the stomach, then grabbed his head and sent him flying to a tree. Tendrils of sand rushed at him, as he dodged them and sent a spinning kick to his face, cracking his armor. Gaara growled, as a wave of sand was unleashed. Naruto smirked, as lightning enveloped his arm. He disappeared and slammed his Raikiri up Gaara's shoulder, earning him a scream of blood. "My blood." Naruto smirked, punching his throat, causing him to shut up, then placed 2 fingers on his head, sending a pulse of chakra. Then, the world turned white. Gaara's mindscape. Gaara groaned as he rose to his feet. He looked around, only to see sand. "Where am I?" he asked, "in your mind." Naruto said, standing next to him. Suddenly, the sand shifted, to form a colossal beast. It was a sandy brown tanuki, with blue markings all over his body. Its eyes had black sclera, yellow iris and a pupil looking like a 4-pointed star, with 4 dots. It had a large tail, almost as big as himself. It roared at Naruto, "Get away. My domain. This is my domain," he yelled, with Naruto sighing, releasing his power. "So you want to fight Shukaku?" he asked, with Shukaku flaring his own power. Soon, Naruto's power overpowered Shukaku's, causing it to yell loudly, "No. I won't lose," he yelled, forming an orb of purple chakra, combining positive and negative chakra. He swallowed the ball, then released a beam of light, one-tailed menacing. All. The beam rushed at Naruto, only for him to jump in the air, rearing his fist back as it glowed with gold chakra of gargantuan amount. He punched Shukaku in the head. "Chakra cannon," he yelled, releasing the chakra, forming a point-blank explosion. He fell back, seeing Shukaku collapsing. He then raised his arm, making a come here motion, a pulse of chakra released from the fingertips. Suddenly, Shukaku's body started transforming into chakra, flowing inside Naruto. Soon, it all disappeared, as Naruto's power flared even more. He smirked happily, turning to Gaara. "You can sleep now," he said, to Gaara's shock. "Fight with all you got in the exams," he said, disappearing from the mindscape. Hotel. Naruto stood inside a room of a hotel. The lights were out and only one other person was inside. On the bed, sleeping peacefully, was Yugito. He silently looked around the room, then approached her. He was right next to the bed, as he slowly took off her sheets, to reveal her wearing only a sports bra and a pair of blue shorts. He pressed one hand to her belly and 2 fingers on her forehead. Then, with a pulse, he teleported inside her mindscape. Yugito's mindscape. Naruto looked around the mindscape with an intrigued look. It was certainly unique and inspired after the Bayou, like Gaara's mindscape. He had heard of the Nibi, the giant cat surrounded by blue flames and capable of absorbing souls if she likes. So, it didn't do him much surprise to find her looking at him in a giant cat box, surrounded by hundreds of graves. The scene was a bit macabre, but nothing new to him. But he did wonder what was the Kyuubi's connection to Suez. He shook that head off, as he looked at Nibi again. He noticed on a small cat bed to the right, laid Yugito, sleeping peacefully. He looked at Nibi's green and yellow eyes, with a smirk. "It is a pleasure to meet you in person, Matatabi," he said, with Nibi hissing, "How do you know that name?" "Only the Bayou, our creator and a few Rinnegan users know them," she said, with Naruto raising an eyebrow, releasing his power. "So, the reincarnation of the one you were born from can't know your name?" he asked, with Nibi standing up slightly. "It can't be. Impossible, she said with narrowed eyes. The power continued to rise, as Naruto's gold eyes glowed. I am Naruto, future Lord of the Nine. And I demand your submission. If you don't give it willingly, I shall take it by force, he said, with Nibi rising. I am not like Shukaku or Son Goku or even Chomei. I don't just fight an opponent I don't know anything about. She jumped in front of him, however, Shinju's reincarnation or not, I shall not allow you to take the Hellcat Mistress without a fight. She roared, as her blue fire shone. Naruto simply smiled. Let's get wild, he said, opening his arms to the sides with a mock bow. Nibi growled, rearing her head back, forming an compressed fireball in her mouth twice the size of any great fireball Naruto has ever seen. Cat flame roaring fire, she said, releasing the fireball like a cannon, making a large explosion. From inside came Naruto, his clothes burning, but other than that he was fine. Matatabi sent her paw at him, attempting to crush him, but Naruto raised his arms and stopped the paw. He then pushed it back with great force, and appeared in front of her, sending an axe kick on her head. Matatabi roared in pain, creating a sonic wave that pushed Naruto back. She looked in angered and surprised. How are you not hurt? My body's flames burn as hot as the sun. Only God fire like that of the Amaterasu is stronger. She yelled, causing Naruto to smirk. You are really foolish. And I thought cats were clever creatures, he said, disappearing and sending a chakra-enhanced punch at her paw, a breaking noise coming from it as Matatabi screamed and used her other paw to cut him in two, only for him to say, water release, water encampment wall, causing it to stop as dense water formed, strong enough to cause her paws to sizzle, as the fire got weakened. You keep thinking you fight an ordinary human. You know my power, you feel it, yet you assume I have human weaknesses, he said, his anger rising, as he raised his arm and multiple water balls formed on the air, shooting off towards her, causing her to roar in pain. You're not fighting a human. You're up against a Bijuu. Against the Lord of the Nine. Fight like you mean it. He roared, releasing a sonic roar that sent her towards a wall. At that moment, Yugito woke up, to see Nibi on the wall and Naruto standing there. She turned to the Bayou, Nibi. What is going on? She yelled, with Nibi growling. Stand back, kitten, she said, forming a purple orb of chakra on her mouth-tailed beast bomb. She yelled, the orb shooting off like a rocket. Naruto pushed his arms forward, stopping the orb. The two sides battled for dominance, with Naruto growling. Nibi then formed two orbs that became one and ate them. Steam rose from her mouth, releasing a blue beam of light, two-tailed menacing ball. Naruto saw it coming, then yelled, chakra torrent. He yelled, the orb cracking and disappearing, as a large blast of gold chakra rushed at the beam. The two sides battled for dominance, until Naruto raised his palm, chakra eruption. He yelled, releasing a compressed orb of chakra, similar to a tailed beast ball. The new power pushed back the beam, until an explosion formed. Naruto appeared above the Nibi, placing his hand on her head. Nice fight, he said, chakra flare. As Nibi was surrounded by a gold light. Once it cleared, stood an injured Nibi, blood flowing as her blue flames were getting smaller. Naruto raised his arm. Who do you serve? He asked, with Nibi saying painfully, the Lord of the Nine. The heir of the Shinju, causing Naruto to smirk. Good kitty, he said, as Nibi transformed into flames that flew inside Naruto's palm. Naruto roared in the air, as his body grew slightly larger. Naruto turned to Yugito. Sorry for the inconvenience. Good luck in your exams, he said, then with a snap of his fingers, Yugito's eyes became dull. Memory eraser success, Naruto thought, disappearing. Castle Takezo. Naruto had returned from his successful visits to his room. He was sitting in his room, meditating. His body was glowing, as blue flames, rings of sand and a red aura was forming around him. This kept on for a while, until they disappeared in his body. He stood up, going to his desk. He sat down in the chair and took out a map of the elemental nations. All right. I now got Kurama, Shukaku and Matatabi. That's 3, 6 remain. Konoha and Suna don't have any, so those are out. Kumo is out as well, for the Hachibi Jinchuriki is said to have full control of his Bayou. I'd prefer to fight him on the real world, not a mindscape. Besides, the fight would draw many heads. So, I need to go to Iwa and Kiri. Iwa will be easy, the Jinchuriki are hated and live in remote locations. All I need to do is take down the Anbu observers and then fight the Bayou. As for Kiri, the Sanbi Jinchuriki I heard was killed, while the Rokubi one is a traveler. He thought, frowning. He looked at the large distance of the countries. Both countries are on the other side of the world and both Beu got 9 tails combined. Also, no matter from where I begin, I would have to cross water and land. He thought, then looked at Azushio, with a bigger frown, remembering his parents. He sighed, all right. It's decided then. I will send spies to find the location of the Sanbi and Rokubi. This way, most of the month will pass with the travel, rather than searching, he thought. He stood up, taking out a kunai and slicing his wrist open. Blood flowed in large quantities down, with Naruto using chakra to halt his regeneration ability from closing the wound, but directed it to blood restoration. After a while, he stopped, the wound closing. With a light pant, he formed hand seals, his arms glowing, blood clone. He yelled, the blood from the ground forming 4 clones of Naruto. The blood clone was a clone technique more powerful than the shadow clone, but wasn't meant to be used in the middle of a fight, as they took lots of chakra and blood to form. Their advantage was that they were 1/10 of the user's power, but they could regenerate their chakra to a point, and to die they needed an actual lethal attack. Simple punches and kicks won't dispel them like a regular clone. Also, they could pass their memories to the user like a regular shadow clone. Alright. You are to go to Water Country and search for the 2 Beu. You are to be disguised. 2 of you will go for the Sanbi, the other 2 for the Rokubi. Once you find it, one of the blood clones are to dispel and send me the information. The other will continue to monitor, until he gets a message from me to reverse summon me to his position when the time is right. Is that understood? He said, getting 4 nods. He nodded back, begin. He said, with them disappearing. He turned back to the map, I got a month. I hope it will take them between 2 and 3 weeks to find them. It will give me time to go to Earth Country, grab the Beu and control their power, then go to Waterfall Country and do the same for the Nanabi. Then, on the final week, I hope to get both Water Country Beu and master them. If I do this earlier than scheduled, I will stop to do some research on things I need for the future. He thought. He then rose, preparing for his trip. He sealed clothes in scrolls and placed them in his bed. He then went to the armory, grabbing scrolls of supplies and weapons. After that, he went back to his room and sealed all of them in one scroll. He nodded to himself, then turned to his armor stand. He approached it, grabbing the Raijin no Ken. He narrowed his eyes, I haven't used you yet, have I? He muttered. With a nod to himself, he pushed chakra into the blade, his eyes glowing. The lightning blade started cracking uncontrollably, until a bright light erupted. When it was gone, the sword had changed. The hilt was the same, only bright yellow lines decorated it. It also had 2 lightning-shaped spikes on the sides, forming a cross, made of gold metal. The blade, however, had changed the most. It was still yellow, only much taller and looked more like a large beam. Lightning appeared around it every few seconds. Naruto smirked, now, you're back to your true form, Raijin no Ken. It said, the sword pulsing. He swung it around, enjoying the feeling. He sheathed it, the blade disappearing. He nodded, I will use you soon, don't worry, he said, placing it to the side. He then went to his bed, falling asleep. The next morning, Naruto woke early, preparing himself. He had changed his uniform. He had on a black shirt, with mesh armor underneath it. The shirt also had his signature face mask. On his arms, he had leather gauntlets. He wore woodland camo trousers and leather boots. He also had a brown cloak above him, with a hood. On the right side of his belt, a plain white porcelain mask was hanged, while on the left, the Raijin. Behind his back was his scroll. He nodded to himself in the mirror, going down to the kitchen. He stopped, however, widening his eyes. Inside the kitchen was Haku, drinking a cup of wasn't the weird thing. What made him widen his eyes was Kin, wearing a black maid uniform, bending over, putting food on the oven. His eyes, along with something else, twitched at the image, but he shook his head. Kin. What the hell is that? He yelled, with Kin yelping, standing up and bowing, good morning master. She said with a blast. Naruto's eye didn't stop, why are you wearing that? He said, with her blushing more, Zabuza-san said I should wear that if I want to please you. Veins appeared on Naruto's temple, as he unsheathed his Raijin, Zabuza. He roared, disappearing. Screams were coming from the living room, causing Haku to sigh. Naruto returned, sighing. Anyway, you don't need to wear that, he said, with Kin nodding. I don't mean to be rude, master, but I like wearing this, she said, causing Naruto to sigh and shrug. Fine. Do what you like, he said, taking a bottle of juice. Kin, get Zabuza and go to the living room. You too, Haku, he said, with the two nodding. Naruto was standing in the living room, looking at Haku, Kin and a smoking, bandaged Zabuza. He crossed his arms. All right. I called you here to let you know that the Chunin exam finals start in 1 month. During that time, I won't be in Konoha. I want you three to take care of the castle. He said, turning to Haku and Kin. I want you two to train as much as I can. Then turned to Zabuza. Do you still have connections? Rogue Nin like the demon brothers that are capable of battling? He asked, with Zabuza nodding. I know a few who could be of use. Not a large number, but I know you prefer quantity over quality, he said, with Naruto nodding. I do. Recruit them. I will talk to the Hokage, so that they are under my protection, he said, Zabuza nodding. He patted Kin in the head. See you in a month, he said, disappearing. Hokage's office. Naruto was standing in the Hokage's office. Hiruzen looked at him. All right. I understand. If Zabuza brings men, I will add them under your clan name, he said, Naruto nodding. Thanks, he said. I also came here to let you know I won't be in Konoha for the month. I will be out to train, he said, with Hiruzen looking at him, like you need training. He said sarcastically, but I won't say anything. However, I have a gift for you, he said, giving him a box. Naruto took it and opened, a look of surprise in his eyes. Inside, laid a mask. It was black and shaped like a wolf. It had red whiskers and the kanji for death in red on the forehead. He looked at it, touching it. Hiruzen smiled. It is the same mask you once wore, Rikolord. I was gonna give it to your successor, but I know none would deserve this title. Besides, you won't die anytime soon, I am sure, he said, rising. He bowed towards Naruto. Do what you must, Okami, he said, with Naruto nodding and bowing in return. Hiruzen rose. I also want to make a bet, he said, with Naruto raising an eyebrow. If something surprises you and I know it will happen, you must give me 100.000 Ryo, he said, with Naruto shrugging. Sure. I don't think it will work though, he said. He exited the building, with Hiruzen thinking, the Okami knows she is coming back, he thought. Gate. Naruto was walking towards the gate, only to see Gaara. He looked at him, with Gaara looking back. After a while, Gaara bowed to him. I wish to become your subordinate, he said, getting a raised eyebrow from him. Why? Gaara looked down. You cured me of my insomnia, took away the demon who tormented me, and with this I have a purpose, he said. Naruto sighed. All right, he said. Rise, Sabaku no Gaara, he said, with Gaara nodding. Don't talk about this to no one. If you have anything to say, send me a summon tomorrow, he said, Gaara nodding. He kept walking, until he passed the gates. The preparations are almost over. Soon, it will start, he thought. Konoha Stadium. The big day had finally arrived. The day each genin had been waiting for. The day the Chunin exam finals would commence, where the young ninjas would show their skills for the chance to become Chunin. It was also the first day in history where all 5 Kage would observe a Chunin exam final together. The stadium had filled to the brim with civilians and shinobi alike. Ninja from all over the world had arrived, as well as lords from provinces and daimyos of countries. Down in the arena stood 8 genin and 1 Shiranui Genma. Genma was a tall man, with shoulder-length brown hair, hidden by a bandana and brown eyes. He was wearing the Konoha Junin uniform and had a senbon in his mouth. Most of the genins were looking in wonder, with some simply being indifferent to the crowd. One, however, looked at an empty space. Don't worry. He will come, said Genma, with Narumi sighing and simply nodding. Narumi had changed in the course of the month. She was wearing a full red bodysuit with red mesh armor. Above that, she had Anbu protection gear made of top-quality steel. On her waist was her kodaki and on her back her tachi. She had 2 kunai holsters on her hips. Finally, she had changed her hairstyle to a high ponytail. She was ready for war, but that was what she was about to do. Stands. Up on the stands, the shinobi were talking among themselves. The hottest topic was the first fight. Uzumaki Naruto versus Namikaze Narumi, the 2 strongest genin going against each other right off the bat. While Genins and Chunins thought Narumi would win, the Junins betted on Naruto, and for good reason. A serious or pissed Naruto was the last thing anyone would ever see. In the middle of the stadium, opposite of the cage box, the Namikaze family were sitting. They were smiling, but on the inside they were sweating. Their 2 children wanted to fight, but they couldn't cheer for one. If they cheered for Narumi, the gap between Naruto would go deeper and invoke Narumi's wrath. If they cheered for Naruto, they would cheer for the one who caused the daughter so much pain, and Naruto wouldn't even like it. No, the best was to sit and observe. Narumi was silent. Most of her injuries had healed, but she still wore bandages on her chest. Next to the 2 stood Asuma Sarutobi, Kurenai Yuhi and Maito Gai. They were betting, with Kurenai betting on Narumi and Gai on Naruto. Asuma simply smoked. Naruko held her chest, Oni-sama, she thought. Cage box. In the upper middle part of the stadium, inside the cage box, 3 of the 5 cage were sitting, the Sandaime Hokage, the Yondaime Kazekage and the Godaime Mizukage. The Kazekage had auburn hair and black eyes. His mouth was hidden with a mask and he wore the Kazekage's robes. The Godaime Mizukage was a tall and slender woman, with long brown hair and emerald green eyes. She wore a long blue dress, with mesh armor underneath it. She also wore high-heeled sandals and shin guards. They were chatting about politics, then the door opened. First came a tall, dark-skinned man, with a very muscular build. He had short platinum blonde hair, combed back, with a mustache and a goatee. He wore a white haori, with the raikage hat. Iota T was left open, showing his chest and golden belt with a boar's head. On his arms he had gold vambraces, while he wore black trousers. Next to him was a man with short and spiky, dark-colored hair and a brown eye, the other hidden by an eye patch. He wore the standard Kumogakure Junin outfit. After him came a short man, with a triangular beard, a mustache and a large red nose. He was bald, with only a ponytail going from the top of his head. He wore a green and yellow coat over the traditional Otogakure outfit and had the Chuchikage's hat. Behind him stood a tall shinobi wearing the standard Otogakure Jonin uniform. He had short dark gray hair and brown eyes. He also had a beard. It was the Yondaime Raikage, the Sandaime Chuchikage and their bodyguards. The cages rose, bowing, getting bows in returns. Hiruzen smiled, "Welcome Raikage, Chuchikage. Thank you for attending," he said, getting a nod from Onoki and a grunt from her as they sat down. Mei then noticed a 6th seat. "Excuse me Hokage Dono, who are we expect?" She was interrupted as the door opened. Hiruzen rose, he said. Inside came 2 men. The first was a man with black hair in a ponytail and red eyes. He wore black bandages all over his body, leaving his face only visible, and had a purple robe above that. He also held a katana. The most noticeable, though, was the man next to him. He was tall, with long gray hair, a beard and piercing purple eyes that gave off a feeling of power. His left cheek also had a cross-shaped scar. He wore a royal blue kimono, decorated with whirlpools, white hakama pants and a red obi. Tied in his obi is a katana with a black handle, sheathed in a steel sheath. The sheath was decorated with an azure dragon. Hiruzen bowed. "I would like to introduce Uzumaki Kenshin, the Shodaime Namikage and once the successor to the seat of Azukage," he said, the rest of the room getting wide eyes. Kenshin simply nodded. Stands. 3 men and a woman sat in the line next to Minato and Kushina. The woman was a tall Kunoichi, with green hair and orange tips framing her 2 bangs and pupilless brown eyes. She wore a sleeveless, backless black top and short tight gray pants, along with an obi. She was Pakura, the legendary Scorch Release user. Next to her sat a young man with short blue hair and dark eyes. He had shark-like teeth and black glasses. He wore urban camo pants and a gray shirt with thin black stripes. On his back was an enormous sword covered by bandages, with only 2 hilts showing. He was Chojuro, wielder of the Hiramekure. Next to him sat a dark-skinned man with platinum blonde hair and sunglasses. He wore the standard Kumogakure outfit with 8 tantos held on red sheaths. He was Killer Bee, the partner of the Raikage. Last was a tall man, with gray hair, along with a goatee and yellow eyes. He wore a light blue kimono with white waves on the sleeves and black hakama pants. He also had a high tie 8 with a wave insignia. When Kushina saw him, she rose with widened eyes. "It can't be. You're dead," she said, with the man smirking and lighting a cigarette. Minato raised an eyebrow. Who is he? He asked. The man smirked. It's been what, Azu princess? 20 to 30 years. He said, as for who I am, Hajime Saito. He said. Kushina gasped, impossible. The Wolf of Whirlpool died at Azushio. She yelled, the rest of the group looking at him. Saito merely took a puff from his cigarette, yet here I am. But me and your father aren't here for you. He scowled, then looked at the arena with a smirk. We're here for him, he said, as Kushina thought, father. Arena. The arena had cleared, only Genma and Narumi were standing. Suddenly, a black figure started rising from the ground. It wore a pitch black cloak with a hood and a black wolf mask. Narumi recognized it immediately. The figure grabbed his cloak and took it off, the cloak disappearing in a puff of smoke. He wore black combat boots and black pants with flames licking the bottom. The pants made a balloon effect. He wore a sleeveless leather jacket, with metal plating and spikes on the shoulders. His muscular arms were bare, with his right bicep having the Konoha Anbu symbol. He had black fingerless gloves with metal plating above it. His black belt buckle had the Konoha Haitai 8, next to it was the Raijin. The most noticeable, though, was his black hair with gold tips. Narumi took a step back in surprise, with Genma nodding, welcome, Uzumaki Naruto, Konoha's Okami no Shi. Cage box. The cages were widening their eyes. A turn to the Hokage, is this true? He yelled, Hiruzen nodding, indeed. You are looking at the Okami no Shi, Konoha's top assassin and predator, he said, Mei licking her lips at him. Kenshin smiled, look at my grandson Shishio, he said, Shishio only nodding. Hiruzen smiled, prepare for one heck of a fight. Stands. Minato and Kushina were gawking, as the rest of the shinobi had their eyes widened, with Guy yelling proudly. Kurenai turned at him, you knew. She accused with Guy smiling, of course. I trained young Naruto-kun in taijutsu. Look at his flames of youth. He yelled. The Genins were also gawking. Shikamaru inwardly thought, troublesome former blonde. Arena. Naruto was looking at Narumi, as she fell into a stance. He quickly raised his arms, a hail of kunai coming her way. She jumped back, only to get a kick at her chin, as Naruto instantly appeared in front of her. She was sent flying, only to maneuver in mid-air, seconds before Naruto kicked the ground, cracks forming. He blasted forward, sending an elbow strike towards her, only for her to narrowly dodge and Naruto hitting the arena, the wall caving in. He took his hand out, dodged a punch from Narumi and sent a fist himself. Narumi blocked it, only to wince in pain. She used Kawarimi, the log splitting in half from a kick. She gained distance, taking out her tachi and coating it in wind chakra, as Naruto took out the Raijin. She charged at him at high speeds, only to jump back, narrowly avoiding a swing from Naruto who had just appeared. A kenjutsu match ensued. Narumi tried to press forward, but found no openings in Naruto's overwhelming assault. She felt the force of each swing, the power behind each strike. She could see cracks forming on her sword, even with wind chakra. She yelled in pain, as rings of lightning electrocuted her when she blocked an upward swing. He kicked her to the air. She spinned and swinged her sword at him, a large blade of wind going towards him. He simply sliced it in half, then fired a beam of lightning at her, forcing her to use Kawarimi. She raised her sword, only to yell in pain as a downward swing broke it in half and gave her a large gash on her shoulder. She jumped back, throwing the broken sword at him, only for Naruto to dodge it by stepping to the left. She growled, releasing 20 kunai in the air. She went through hand seals, kunai shadow clone technique. She yelled, the 20 kunai becoming 20,000 as Naruto stabbed his sword to the ground, a lightning barrier forming. He dispelled it, only to raise his sword in the air. Black clouds started appearing. Then, with a downward stab, a thunderbolt hit Narumi. He expected a Kawarimi or a barrier. Not a large surge of chakra and an unseen force blasting him back and dispelling the meteor. He crashed on the wall, a crack forming on his mask. As he rose, he saw Narumi, chakra surrounding her. However, her eyes were now blue, with 4 rings. Narumi frowned, I didn't expect to use this so early. Nisan, be proud to feel the power of the Rinnegan. She said, Naruto saying nothing. Stands. The Chunin were gawking, she has the Rinnegan. They said, with Minato nodding. Kurenai raised an eyebrow, what is that? She asked. Kushina explained, the Rinnegan. The strongest of the 3 great dojutsu and rumored to be the Kekkei Genkai of the Rikudo Senin. It is activated by some members of the Uzumaki clan and rarely from Uchiha and Senju members. It allows complete control over the elements, along with other abilities, she explained, to Kurenai's shock. Saito didn't say anything. Cage box. The cages were also surprised. She has the Rinnegan. You knew that, Hiruzen? Asked Onoki, getting a no. Rasa raised an eyebrow. I wonder what the wolf will do now, he said. Kenshin narrowed his eyes. So my granddaughter has unlocked the Rinnegan. What will you do, Naruto? He thought. Arena. Narumi went through hand seals as two clones appeared and sent a torrent of flames at Naruto's way, one cloning making earth bullets and the other a wind hurricane. The three jutsu combined into one, with Naruto dodging, getting hit partially in the process, but shrugging it off. She raised an arm at him, Naruto getting pulled towards her with a cry of universal pull. The two clones went through hand seals. One sent a jet of water towards him, the other electrocuting it. The result was Naruto getting hit and an explosion occurring. Narumi's clones dispelled, as the real one sent him flying with a yell of almighty push, crashing him into a wall. Naruto rushed out of the wall, jumped into the air, then swung his blade multiple times, lightning waves going towards Naruto's wave. Dust settled up, as the moment he touched the ground, he sent a downward slice that tore the earth open, the arena wall cracking. However, a red flash appeared next to him. He turned, only for a blue orb of chakra to crash into his face, with Narumi sending him flying with a Rasengan. Naruto crashed into the wall again, as Narumi panted, that was for Naruto. She said. However, a large wave of chakra soared through the air. Narumi stepped back, as Naruto came from the rubble, laughing, as his mask sported large cracks. He kept laughing, the chakra waves rising, until a large light appeared, as the chakra went back. She looked at Naruto only to gasp. A black aura surrounded him, his eyes glowing gold from behind his mask. I like this mask, said Naruto as he took it off, his eyes closed. He sealed it and opened his eyes. They were exactly like Narumi's, only gold with a slit pupil. He smirked, his fangs showing. Let's see how your Rinnegan does against mine, he said, causing her to gulp, taking out her Kodaki. Cage box. Him too, yelled A, with the rest of the room gawking. Hiruzen sweet dropped. I kinda knew he had that, he said, with Rasa turning to him. Are you sure it is even fair to have him participate? He is beyond even an Anbu commander, he said, with Onoki nodding. Mei licked her lips more, looking at him hungrily. Kenshin grinned. That's it, my grandson, he yelled. Stands. The Junins were gawking, him too. Asuma yelled, with Guy screaming youth. Saito smirked. What else do you have to show, Uzumaki? He thought. Naruto, eyes were wide as saucers. Minato was surprised. I can't believe it. You have the Rinnegan, he thought. Kushina held her chest. Sochi-kun, she thought. Arena. Narumi raised her arm as Naruto did the same, almighty push. They both said. The two waves cancel each other, however, Naruto yelled again, almighty push, sending Narumi to a wall. She rose, impossible, she yelled with wide eyes. Naruto smirked, universal pull. He said, bringing her close, you need 8 seconds to reuse the almighty push. I need none. You haven't practiced with it enough, have you? He said with a smirk. Well, allow me to show you the power of the Rinnegan. He roared. To Narumi's amazement, Naruto's left arm turned into what appeared to be a piston. He released Narumi, only to hit her with the piston, sending her flying. The piston turned into an arm cannon, which sent a beam of black chakra towards her. She narrowly dodged it, the ground disintegrating. Naruto then fired numerous rockets at her, forcing her to dodge. One, however, hit her and cracked her armor. She scowled in pain. Naruto smiled and turned his arm to normal, only to slam both palms into the ground, summoning technique. He yelled, as two enormous birds with Rinnegan eyes charged at her. She raised her arms, almighty push. She yelled, using a large amount of chakra and destroying them instantly. She panted, Naruto making a come here motion. She growled, forming a Rasengan. She added wind chakra in it, as it turned into an enormous shuriken, a screeching sound forming. Naruto smirked. Oh, so you can use that, he said. Narumi smirked. Wind release, spiraling shuriken. She yelled, rushing at him. He raised his palms as she thrusted it forward, expecting him to use almighty push. To her horror, a barrier stopped it, the wind Rasengan getting absorbed. He grabbed her arms and kneed her stomach, blood flowing from her mouth. He then pressed his palm on her head, sending chakra at her head. She yelled in pain, as he let go and roundhouse kicked her away. She growled, throwing her Kodaki at him, all nature's coursing through it. He raised an arm as a large head with Rinnegan eye swallowed it. He then spat it out, forcing her to dodge as it destroyed the trees. The head disappeared. You have yet to touch the surface of the Rinnegan. How disappointing, he said. Narumi got pissed. I won't lose, she said, releasing all of her chakra chains to him. He disappeared, only to appear on top of the wall. And what will you do? Most of the kunai got destroyed in the battle. Your swords are gone, and you spent most of your chakra, he said. She growled, sending her chains at him. He simply jumped down, the chains striking at his spot. He appeared in front of her and they clashed in a taijutsu match, lasting only 10 seconds. She sent her leg at him, only to catch it. He kicked her other leg, then spinned her around and sent her upwards. As she was coming down, he grabbed her midair and slammed her to the ground. He jumped back a few feet, as she roared, making a Rasengan. She sent a kunai at him, Naruto standing still. The kunai narrowly passed him, only for Narumi to appear above him in a red flash, the Rasengan inches from his face. However, to the shock of everyone, Naruto disappeared in a black flash, only to appear above her, 2 black Rasengan on each of his hands, Rasengan barrage. He yelled, planting both on her back, drilling her to the ground as she screamed in pain. An explosion occurred. Once the smoke cleared, Naruto stood victorious over Narumi. He frowned. If you had the Kyuubi and mastered the Rinnegan, this fight would be entertaining, he said, then sighed, leaving the arena, as the medics picked Narumi up. Stands. Minato and Kushina were up, looking in shock at the ending of the fight. Naruto was gaping. He used a Hiraishin without a seal, Minato thought. He mastered the Rinnegan, Kushina thought. Oni-sama, Oni-chan, thought Naruto. Asuma dropped his cigarette as Guy had tears in his eyes from the youthful battle. The Genins were all gaping at the battle. Soon, the crowd erupted in cheers. Cage box. The cages were also clapping, the fight too amazing not to. Kenshin smirked, clapping as well. Well done, my grandson, he thought. Shishio looked at Kenshin, then at Naruto. He is of your blood after all, Batasai, he thought. Hiruzen smiled. I am so proud of you, Naruto-kun. Even if your future is dark, your flame is too hot to disappear, he thought. Genin waiting room. Naruto appeared inside the waiting room, observing the reactions of the rest of the contenders. Shikamaru was muttering, troublesome former blonde. Kuretsuki and Sumui were alarmed. Gaara and Yugito nodded towards him, though the latter with a scowl. Orohime was blushing at him. Rias winked at him and Sasuke nodded, though his eyes looked angry. Naruto merely leaned on a wall, as the proctor called the next match. He closed his eyes, counting inwardly. Suddenly, feathers started falling, as explosions rocked Konoha. He opened his eyes, looking at the cage box as it exploded and the cage jumped to the roof. He smirked as sound ninjas started invading, taking out the Raijin, the blade pulsing with excitement, as his eyes turned to the Rinnegan. Time to complete the preparations. And spill some blood, he said, howling. Roof. Up on the roof, the 5 cage and their bodyguards were standing face to face with Orochimaru. Suddenly, in a yellow flash appeared Minato and Kushina. Orochimaru smirked, raising his arms. Good. Everyone is here. Though I did not expect the legendary Batasai to be alive, or to be here. Neither did I expect Shishio, the Sword of Fire. But it doesn't matter. I got what I need to deal with all of you, he said, as he nodded at 5 shinobi behind him. The 4 of them went to the 4 corners of the roof, slamming their hands together, 4 violet flames formation. They yelled, a large purple barrier surrounding the group. Orochimaru then slammed his hands on the ground, summoning impure world reincarnation. He yelled. Suddenly, a number of coffins came out. From the first came a man with long black hair, dark eyes and wearing a black suit, with red samurai armor. He was the Shodime Hokage, Hashirama Senju. The next man had white shaggy hair, red eyes and 3 red markings on his face. He wore a hapuri with the Konoha symbol, a black bodysuit and blue samurai armor. He was the Nadaime Hokage, Tobarama Senju. From the third coffin came a man with long silver hair, dark eyes, wearing the traditional Konoha uniform. He was Tsukumo Hitaki, Konoha's White Fang. 4 coffins opened together, showing 4 members of the 12 ninja guardians. The first was a woman with black hair and yellow eyes, the second a man with brown hair and black eyes, the third a man with short light brown hair, and the fourth a man with black eyes and brown hair. The fourth was a man with spiky, light brown hair and jade green eyes, wearing the Otogakure Chunin outfit. He was Gary of the explosion release. The final coffin revealed a man with long blonde hair, with eyes having light irises and dark sclera. He wore a respirator on his face and wore the standard Omegakure outfit, with his flak jacket having swirls. He was Hanzo the Salamander. Orochimaru smirked. "What? You thought I would come unprepared?" he asked, with the cages scowling. Hiruzen turned to Minato and Kushina. "You two handle the Shodaime and Nadaime. I will deal with Orochimaru," he said, taking out his robes to reveal his battle armor. "The cage bodyguards, you two take the 4 ninja guardians. Lord Shishio, take out Orochimaru's guard," he said with authority, as the men and women simply nodded. Curled his hands into fists, as lightning surrounded him. "I shall take the White Fang," he said. Onoki sighed, floating into the air. "I will handle Gary," he said. Kenshin took out his sword. Mei flared her chakra and gold dust surrounded Rasa. "We will handle Hanzo," Kenshin said. Orochimaru thrusted his hand forward, the reincarnated shinobi rushing. "Let the battle begin," he yelled. Konoha. The village was in a frenzy as the Oto shinobi invaded, along with what appeared to be an army of different rogue nin, ronin and bandits. They all charged, destroying and killing. The walls were being sieged by large snake summons, but were held off by Jiraiya. The important buildings were being guarded by Anbu, as Junin were battling and Chunin were instructing the Genins on what to do. The civilians and academy students were in the monument bunker, with Academy Chunin guarding them. The Hokage Tower and the orphanage was held by root shinobi. The stadium and its surrounding area were in complete chaos. The Konoha Junin and the cage bodyguards were fighting with all the ninja who had infiltrated. Kakashi was using 2 kunai, cutting down enemies. Kurenai stunned them with genjutsu for Asuma to finish them with his chakra blades, and Guy used his terrifying taijutsu. Killer Bee used his unorthodox fighting style of 8 sword to cleave through waves of enemies, with Saito killing anyone passing his onslaught. Pakura was commanding 3 orbs of white flames to mummify enemy shinobi, while Chojuro used the Hiramekure in the form of 2 swords to cut through any ronin. Outside, stood Zabuza, Haku, the Demon Brothers and some other shinobi, stopping any enemy from going either to the arena, or the road towards the academy. Zabuza was grinning madly, swinging his Kubakiri Boko to any enemy he could find, Haku freezing them for the Demon Brothers to cut them in half and the rest using team attacks to finish them off. The Genins were to the hospital, 2 blocks away from the stadium and to the library opposite of it. They were guarding them, Yugito sending fire, Gaara crushing them with sand, Shikamaru using his shadows, Sasuke fought with his Sharingan, Rias used her special red chakra and Inoue her special ability. Simui and Kuretsuki were standing in the middle of the street, guarding each other's back, as Simui used her blade and Kuretsuki fists made of earth. Naruto was having the time of his life. He was running from one place to another, swinging his Raijin, blood spurting out. His eyes were glowing, his fangs showing, as his speed kept rising, along with his power. He saw Kabuto, then smirked appearing in front of him and cutting his arm off. Kabuto screamed in pain, jumping back. Naruto swung his sword, a lightning wave slicing through him, only to reveal a log. He ducked, as Kabuto swung his chakra scalpel at him, then disappeared only to reappear behind him, stabbing his gut. He took it out, Kabuto spitting out blood, only for him to duck and use Kawarimi, narrowly avoiding getting beheaded. He reappeared, sending snakes at him, only for Naruto to cut them in half and surrounding him with lightning rings. Kabuto yelled in pain, getting electrocuted, his healing getting halted. He used Shunshin to disappear, only for Naruto to appear in front of him. He kneed his stomach, then used his other knee at his chin, only to use his leg for a high kick. Kabuto soared through the air, only for Naruto to appear above him in a black flash and slicing him in half. He then aimed his hand at him, turning it into a metal cannon, sending a black beam that disintegrated him. As he came down, he spat the ground. He turned, noticing the purple barrier and smirked, disappearing. Minato versus Nadaime. Minato held his kunai, facing the Nadaime. They were engaging in a fast-paced taijutsu match. Minato ducked under a punch, only to miss a swift kick as Tobirama jumped. He went for a high kick only for Tobirama to disappear and try to stab him, which Minato dodged. This kept going for quite a while, neither side getting an advantage. Damn. He is strong. His speed and reflexes equal mine and our taijutsu skills are equal. Ninjutsu will win this match, he thought, disappearing in time to avoid a punch. He reappeared a few feet back, then jumped back, throwing kunai shadow clone technique. He said, the kunai becoming hundreds. Tobirama let them hit him, piercing him through but healing instantly. He did hand seals, sending a tidal wave at Minato. He cursed, disappearing in a yellow flash. Tobirama did hand seals, the tidal wave transforming into a water sphere the size of a house, sending it at Minato. Minato took out his kunai, as the air was covered in summoning markings. The orb was swallowed, only for a water blast to hit Tobirama the moment Minato pointed the kunai at him. Now's my chance, he thought, disappearing in a yellow flash, appearing before Tobirama and sending an Udama Rasengan in his gut. An explosion rocked the area, as Minato jumped back. However, to his shock, Tobirama was still alive. Half of his face was left, the rest of his body regenerating. Minato noticed the ceiling tag, then rushed at him. Tobirama, now only missing his legs and part of his torso, sent a jet of water at him, only for Minato to jump above it, sending a Rasengan at his head. The tag disintegrating, as Tobirama disappeared. Minato fell to the ground, panting. Kushina vs. Shodime. Kushina was currently in a taijutsu match with Hashirama inside a forest he made, neither halting. She was using her katana coated in wind chakra, while Hashirama had his fist surrounded by wood. She threw a downward swing only for Hashirama to catch it and kick her back, breaking the sword. She growled, her chakra flaring, "That is my family's sword, you zombie." She yelled, sending a punch that broke the wood in his hands. They battled like this for a while, only now using jutsu. Kushina sent a stream of pressurized water, only for a wood wall to rise, blocking it. The wall turned into roots, going her way. She jumped above, swinging her arm as a blade of wind was going his way, which he dodged. Hashirama raised his arm, a wooden spear forming from his arm and blasting her way. She spat out an orb of water, slowing it down and cracking it, then sent a wind bullet that split it in half, rushing at Hashirama. He dodged, only to get his arm cut off as Kushina appeared in front of him, cutting his arm with a wind blade forming from her arm. She kept swinging at him, cutting him in different places, only for him to keep regenerating. Hashirama sent a wood spear from the ground, as she dodged it, only to get sliced in her ribs. She winced, kicking him back and releasing her chakra chains. This has gone long enough, she thought, her eyes glowing with power. Hashirama got stabbed in different places, as he was pulled towards her. She slapped her palm all over him, seals appearing on his body. She then kicked him away, then did the ram seal. The seals glowed, as the body was disintegrating. She noticed the tag, sending a tiny water orb at high speeds, destroying it. She panted as Hashirama disappeared with a smile. A versus Tsukumo. A was currently fighting Tsukumo, having the advantage in a taijutsu match. He was faster than him, getting many hits with his lightning limbs, doing no damage though, as Tsukumo kept regenerating. A grabbed Tsukumo, throwing him into the air, then appeared and slammed him into the ground, yelling, "Liger bomb." As a lightning explosion rocked the ground. A growled as Tsukumo rose, his destroyed body getting repaired. Tsukumo rose and rushed at him, sending a punch coated in lightning chakra, only for it to shrug it off, his lightning armor protecting him. He punched Tsukumo away, only for him to flip in midair and send an enormous fireball at the Raikage's way, which he dodged instantly. A then jumped at him, sending a kick his way, to which Tsukumo dodged and attempted to slice him with a sword made of chakra. Across his arms, the blade barely hitting him, then with a power boost, pushed it back and crashed both of his fists in Tsukumo's chest. Tsukumo flew back only to Shunshin next to her and spit a torrent of flames at his chest, which he protected with his arms. Once the jutsu ended, a scowled, as the flames were hot enough to injure him. He disappeared as Tsukumo sent an earth pillar his way, only to reappear above it, charging at him. Tsukumo then sent an earth dragon, which are destroyed with a single punch. He rushed, rearing his arm back, then slamming it at Tsukumo's neck, lightning release, lariat. he yelled. Sakumo's chest was blown off, as a grabbed his head, iron claw. He yelled, sending a pulse of lightning chakra and slamming it to the ground. He raised his fist, to reveal a burning tag. He closed it tightly, as his cloak vanished. Onoki versus Gary. Onoki and Gary were fighting using their respective chakra affinities, rocks appearing and exploding every moment. Onoki dodged a punch from Gary, jumping back and forming a dozen earth golems. Gary attacked them with multiple yells of explosion release, landmine fist, destroying him instantly. Onoki sent a shower of sharp rocks at him, only for him to use explosion release, exploding palm, destroying each rock with a small blast. Onoki sent an earth dragon his way, with Gary destroying it. Gary, however, was forced to dodge a stream of fire, followed by a wind tornado. He then approached him, battling him with a giant fist, to which Gary destroyed, blasting Onoki, to reveal an earth clone. The battle was going on for a while, with Onoki eluding Gary using golems and clones, while gaining distance with long-range attacks. Soon, sweat had formed on Onoki's face. All right. That's enough. I know what needs to be done, he thought. He made a clone and went through hand seals, wind release, pressure damage, lightning release, false darkness. A cyclone of lightning trapped Gary and exploded, damaging his body. Onoki sent his clone at Gary, which was destroyed in a second, but it was all Onoki needed. Earth release, swamp of the underworld, he yelled, slamming his arms into the ground. Mud surrounded Gary's legs, making it impossible to move and draining his chakra. Gary looked up, only to see a white cube between Onoki's palms. Onoki propelled the cube to Gary, the cube expanding in size and trapping Gary within it. Dust release, detachment of the primitive world, he yelled, the cube exploding. When the smoke vanished, nothing was left. Onoki fell to the ground, holding his back in pain. Kenshin, Mei and Rasa versus Hanzo. The three Kage were currently fighting Hanzo. Despite the advantage in numbers, the Amekichi held his own well, a testament of beating the three Sannin. He was currently battling Kenshin with his Kusarigama, as Kenshin fought with his blade, coated in chakra. He was supported by Rasa, who was distracting Hanzo with his gold dust, providing openings for Mei to throw her affinities at him. Their teamwork was flawless, but Hanzo was simply too skilled to gain an advantage over. Kenshin ducked under a swing from the Kusarigama, jumping forward, holding his blade, one hand at the hilt, the other lightly touching the blade itself. Dragon soaring flash, he yelled, the blade cutting through Hanzo's chin, only to regenerate. Sarah punched Hanzo with a wave of gold dust, sending him into the air, as Mei sent out a lava ball at him. However, Hanzo appeared a few feet away and sent a stream of flames, which were stopped from a wall of gold dust. From behind it came Mei and Kenshin, both of which spat out two water dragons, both hitting him. His sides were gone and regenerating. Sora narrowed his eyes at his opened ribs. How did Hanzo earn his title? He asked. Mei frowned, turning to Hanzo. He had a poisonous sac implanted in him. She realized, with Kenshin rushing at him. Rasa, trap his legs, he yelled, with Rasa nodding. On it, he said, tying Hanzo's legs with gold dust. Mei formed a water orb near Hanzo, which Kenshin jumped to and propelled himself towards him from above. He took his sword out. Dragon hammer flash, disaster, he yelled, stabbing his blade at Hanzo's ribs, right where the sack was. Hanzo soon froze, with Kenshin taking out his blade. Now, he yelled. With a tug, Rasa crushed Hanzo's legs, as Mei spat out her acidic mist. Boil release, skilled mist, she yelled. The mist surrounded Hanzo, its corrosive strength to the fullest, destroying Hanzo's body in seconds. Then, Rasa surrounded the mist in a gold dust dome, as Kenshin placed a seal on it. The seal glowed, an explosion rocking the roof, as the dome of gold dust disintegrated. All three shinobi were panting, having battled a formidable opponent, even if he wasn't in control, or as powerful as he once was. Shishio versus Kimimaro. Shishio looked at his opponent, having his sword out. Kimimaro was a man with pale skin, shoulder-length white hair and green eyes. He had two red dots on his head. He wore black pants and a loose-fitting, zip-up shirt, its color a light lavender. Kimimaro was holding two bones in his hands. Shishio smirked. Try to entertain me, he said, with Kimimaro disappearing and attempting to slice him in half. Shishio, however, blocked with his blade. He reared the sword back, grinding against the bones, as the blade was surrounded by fire, to Kimimuro's shock. He jumped back, narrowly avoiding getting stabbed, as his chest sported a black mark, courtesy of the flame. Kimimuro rushed at him again, using the same technique, only for Shishio to block it, then slice his torso, as the wound was instantly cauterized. He jumped back and activated his curse seal, his skin darkening. He took out his spine, sending it at Shishio, holding him tightly, then with a large push of chakra, he formed a large bone drill. He drew Shishio close, attempting to stab him. Shishio, however, sent his palm at the top of the drill, pushing along the surface and forming an explosion. Kimimuro looked at Shishio, only to find him gone and his bone drill damaged. However, he gasped as a fist hit his gut, the same fist grabbing his shoulder. Shishio then sliced his arm with his sword, another explosion occurring. Once the smoke was gone, so was Kimimuro's shoulder, his arm falling off. Kimimuro roared in pain, sending bone bullets from his fingers, which Shishio dodged. He sheathed his sword and rushed at him, unsheathing it quickly, the sword catching fire. With a swift attack, he killed Kimimuro, as his head fell to the ground the moment Shishio sheathed his sword. That was a good warm-up, he said, going towards Kenshin. Guards versus Guardians. The Guardians and the Cage Guards were in a heated match. The battle was mostly taijutsu, with coordinated attacks and combined jutsu techniques. Eventually, they defeated them through a series of coordinated assaults. First, Kitsuki trapped each Guardian from below the waist with earth. Then, Dodai surrounded them with rubber, further constricting them, leaving only the heads open. Ao then sealed the 4 Guardians as Baki destroyed their heads with a wind sword attack. Roof corner. Sarutobi and Orochimaru were currently in a heated match, Orochimaru using the Kusanagi while Hiruzen used Enma in his adamantine staff form. Burns from jutsu and numerous ninja tools were scattered around them, their battle going on for a long time. Orochimaru was very pissed. He jumped back. Impossible. You are an old man. A weak old man. Yet you fight like you were 10 years younger. How? He roared, with Sarutobi smirking. He stood still, the staff pointed at Orochimaru. I am not as strong as I was in my prime, but I am strong enough to defeat you. And the answer is simple: training. He said, disappearing, only to appear above Orochimaru, swinging the staff down, which Orochimaru blocked with the Kusanagi. At that moment, Enma had taken enough and vanished. Hiruzen quickly kneed Orochimaru's face, twisted his sword-wielding arm, the Kusanagi falling, then rolled him over his shoulder. He kicked the sword away and dodged a mad punch from Orochimaru, only to get a knee at his stomach. Orochimaru kicked him away and rushed at him with a kunai. Hiruzen used Shunshin, only to send a wave of fire at Orochimaru, to which he countered with a stream of mud. Hiruzen then disarmed him with a shuriken and punched him hard enough to send him flying. Orochimaru growled, grabbing Kusanagi, only to dodge 2 swings, one from Kenshin and one from Shishio. He got hit by her and was sent flying, only to get hit by a wave of gold dust. He rose and used Kawarimi to avoid a wave of fire from Mei and disappeared before Onoki could punch him with a rock fist. He then got stabbed by Kushina in the shoulder, only to get a Rasengan in his gut from Minato, sending him flying. He spat out a new Orochimaru in midair, the new one however was panting. He turned around, noticing all the reanimated shinobi and Kimimuro dead. The Guardians were also getting destroyed by the cage bodyguards. He was gonna escape, only to gasp as the barrier top broke, a thunderbolt crashing down. He dodged it narrowly, only to scream as he got the Raijin in his gut. With a quick motion, Naruto took the sword out, cut Orochimaru's arm, then stabbed him again, grabbing the Kusanagi. He sealed it and placed his arm on Orochimaru's head. Any last requests? He said with Orochimaru spitting at go to hell. Angrily. Naruto smirked, I fully intend to. Heaven comes after hell, he said, taking Orochimaru's soul. He then cut the body to pieces with the Raijin and incinerated all but the head with a lightning beam. He turned to Hiruzen, Hokage-sama, there are still enemies. I suggest dealing with them. 'Cause soon, something bigger will come, he said cryptically, disappearing. Stadium. The stadium was ruined. The walls were gone, so were half of the stands. But the defenders had pushed back the attackers. In the arena stood Killer Bee, dealing with 2 last enemies. He stabbed one, dodged a fist, then crushed his neck. However, he jumped back as a figure crashed to his previous spot. The figure rose, revealing Naruto. Naruto flared his power, his black chakra felt in the entire Konoha. Hello, Killer Bee. Do me a favor and get the Hachibi out here, he said, his eyes glowing. Me and him have unfinished business, he grinned, showing his fangs. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.